In any case, ceasefire fails. JD comes home. U.S. wants to blockade the Hormuz Lamau. Ezra Klein defends me as centrist Dems concede on tent expansion to the left. Situation monitored. Epstein's Fury Day 43. New York City tomorrow. Tuesday. Get in now. Socialists have Mahmoud Mamdani coming to school. Also, Aphex Twizzy, I know your ass invited me to, or someone in your, I think someone invited me as well. What are you guys trying to like get all the people in like the Haram Mamdani orbit? Because you just can't get Zoran, so you're trying to get his dad. You're trying to get me. Your manager replied, "Yeah, I said I'd be down to do it." You ain't slick, bro. You are not slick. Also, are you trying to get the fucking chapter shut down? This is what I don't understand. Are you trying to get the chapter shut down? Because this is what's gonna happen. Okay, this is what's gonna happen. You want me to come on that campus? Is Zoran's dad mogging you? Yale, a demonic place. Please destroy the skull and bones. Geronimo's skull. Orban L, ceasefire fails. JD comes home. All this stuff. We got so much to talk about today. It's a jam-packed Sunday. I don't even stream on Sundays. Normally Sundays are fun days, but obviously today is going to be a heavy news day for all of the fun day enjoyers, because we have to cover we have to monitor the situation. A lot going on with said situation, right? Hit the butt, bro. You're always streaming. True. Stop saying you have fun, man. I mean, it's fun for me. It's EF day 44, not 43. Started on February 28th, day 1. Added 31 days from March. Goes 32. Don't big dog. Maybe we just don't. Maybe we just have a different way of doing the calculation. You know, really care who's stressing the numbers at this point. You know what I mean? What's the difference between 44 and 43? You know, shit. Anyway, right? Glad you're in a good mood, Chipper. Yeah, you want to know why I'm in a good mood and I'm chipper? Because for the last 3 years, I've been called a fucking terrorist nonstop by dumb shitters on the internet who desperately want to be recognized by the centrist flank of the Democratic Party, who have actively made it their lives' mission to present me as this spoiler, as this bad guy. And now you have one of the top dogs on the liberal side that every centrist leans into, that every, Democratic that word like the gospel, turning around and out of nowhere, by the way, literally out of nowhere. I had no idea that this was coming. Ironically enough, I had talked to Noah Colwyn about potentially, doing possible media hits in like papers, right? He was like, "Oh, you should do Jewish Currents." I'd be talking to Peter Beinart. Anyway, Peter reached out to me a while back. I said, "Yeah, let's do it." But I told Noah, I was like, what would be the best possible way to have this conversation is with Ezra Klein, who is the king of liberals and also the king of like liberal Zionism as well, right? Because that would be a very productive conversation. I know that he would most likely have a very open-minded conversation with someone like me. With Ta-Nehisi Coates, right? So from that perspective, this is like, this is the greatest. He just did it on his own. I thought I would be able to like reach out to him and do a podcast with him, but turns out wasn't even necessary. He just wrote it himself. How is it that the comment section from the Ross Douthy segment was a million times more charitable than the Ezra piece? I don't know what the comment section looks like, but they probably flooded it. But yeah, I don't need to worry about the ADL because the person who's going to be cooking my ass is going to be Z-Way today, or well, tomorrow. So, that's that. Your perseverance, every bit of bullshit these past 3 years is truly incredible. Beyond good seeing your tide rising, Papa. Yeah, I mean, It's not just about me and my reputation and the reputational damage I incurred. That's irrelevant. That's secondary, right? As long as I have you, none of that shit matters. As long as I can still have a platform that I can say the truth on, and I'll keep pushing, right? But this is a very consequential change. The reason why it's a very consequential change is because this is a concession, an open concession from a liberal who is, very in the liberal intelligentsia, who approached the issue with charitability and said, it's fucking ridiculous. Like, this is, and it's not just about me, it's about this movement. Said we have to align with these guys. That's huge. Because remember, initially, the conversation was like, Hassan is bad. Democrats need to stay away from him, And what did I tell you at the time? I was like, this ain't about me. This is about you. This is about all of us. This is about a change that is happening in the Democratic Party, who the Democrats should be more responsive to, right? What issues the Democrats need to highlight and need to lead on. Not just Israel, but Medicare for all as well, right? Economic left populism. These are things that I advocate for, and the collection of all of those resentments is precisely what the establishment feared. The establishment wanted to push aside, right? They wanted to make sure that they never had to have that conversation. They didn't want to talk about the message, so they wanted to shoot the messenger and disparage the messenger. Because the moment that you talk about that message, all of a sudden people are going to be like, wait a minute, I do agree with that. Now I feel like you're yelling at me, right? So this is a huge step in that direction. I think this is a first of many significant concessions to the left flank, okay? Very consequential, and only got here because all of you stood strong and you were steadfast in your approach, in your advocacy, said, nah, we're not doing that. We're not playing that fucking game, right? And here we are. Here we are. In any case, I suspect that some liberals will take this lightly and will wave the white flag quietly. I saw Trey Easton of Searchlight Institute straight up saying, you know what, that's right, we're good, right? We're good. We should be done with it, right? We should be done with this shit. We shouldn't be fighting with Hassan. Why are we doing it anyway? Like, he says something along those lines, right? Which was really funny to hear, because he's been, one of the hard. He's been one of the diehard, most frustrated individuals on this issue, right? He said, I don't think Hassan Piker is the enemy. I just wish that he and his followers didn't treat the Democratic Party like it's their enemy. Never Trumpers exist in the Democratic coalition without repeatedly bashing the party and demanding it take specific stances in exchange for their votes. If this is how he'd like to be treated, he should consider adjusting his own posture. See, this is the problem. Never Trumpers don't even need to make those concessions. They don't need to make those demands because the Democrats already leaned into that. That's the problem. That's the reason why we're having this conversation. If the Democrats were more responsive, if the Democrats were more responsive to our demands, and our demands are the popular demands, our demands expand far beyond the people that tune in and watch me here every day, far beyond people who watch the TikTok clips and agree, far beyond the people who go on YouTube and only watch the clips. Our demands are popular demands that many Americans across the board, people who've never fucking voted for the Democrats, people who self-identify as independents, and even Republicans living in the countryside, these are their demands as well. So not only is this good politics, it's good policy, but it's also good politics, sorry. Not only is this good policy, it's helpful in advancing people's material conditions. If you were proudly and saying, we are the Medicare for all party, we're gonna fix healthcare in this country. We're gonna fix housing in this country, right? We are the party that says fuck Israel, right? Like, that is a populist message, right? So it's not even the Democrats being responsive to us and our needs. We're not like petulant children on this, demanding this shit for reason. We want the Democrats to push for these policies because it'll also win elections, ensure that Republicans never win again, and last but not least, it will improve people's material conditions. That's what is the most important, most consequential aspect of this at the end of the day. The never Trumpers don't make demands in daylight. They do behind closed doors as donors. Yup.
I was talking.
Listen to her. I am always vindicated. Z-Way posted on our IG channel broadcast and asked people to drop questions for your appearance. And of course, Ethan Klein Cultish shared it on their sub. And they completely brigaded it with a bunch of questions about Kaya, about being pro-rape, helping Trump win, etc. There's barely any normal questions. It's the only question thread with hundreds of comments. I hope you reach out to Z-Way and let her know what's going on. Thank you for informing me. I'll do that. I'm sure she's aware. Genuine question: shouldn't lesser progressive Democrats then run on a just 2% platform in regards to how much we want to tax the billionaires and deal with some of these issues? I mean, whichever way. Just another psychosexual stalker. How do you keep catching these dudes like Pokeballs? Kamala said, be transactional. My queen.
Earlier about how people are so transactional. I think we need to be transactional voters.
I mean, not only did you zero concessions knowing that people had your back, you deserve this victory lap. Your convictions and strong moral standings keep getting vindicated. This whole past month was one big Streisand moment for the race in your profile. Yup.
I think, yes, it is right when we are trying to get folks to register to vote and to go vote, and it is absolutely right that we remind everyone of our history, especially when they're trying to erase it. We remind people of the lives, the bloodshed on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the sacrifice of those young people at the lunch counter, the assassination of Dr. King. There are so many things that we must remember about history so that what compels us to vote includes not only our civic duty, but honoring the ancestors. Yes, and here's what I'm suggesting in addition. Get yours. Vote and say, I'm voting because I expect something out of this. You're not going to take for granted that I'm going to vote because I'm a good citizen and it's my civic duty to vote, so that you don't even worry about whether you're producing what I need because, oh, we can count on them to vote because they remember the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I'm saying it's okay to also give people permission to be transactional and to say, if you're going to get my vote, this is what I expect.
Yeah. $50,000 in tax credits, small businesses, no Medicare for all, no end to the genocide. This is what we want. This is what we want. This is how we must be transactional, okay?
I'm going to vote because I expect to get something out of this. I'm going to get mine by voting. That's what I would offer. I think it's okay to give people permission to be transactional voters.
Yeah, when I said this is Kamala Harris's election, everybody yelled at me, by the way. So what's up? She literally thought get yours was going to be a huge applause line. I just don't understand, because like this is literally what I was saying. This is at the heart of theoretical democracy. This is the principle. This is the fundamental aspect of the democratic process. Voting is a transactional experience. Voting is not given, is earned. Votes are earned by Democrats, okay? And that is at the heart of my frustration, okay? That's at the heart of my frustration with the Democratic Party, which I addressed, I brought up in my Pod Johns episode. Very excited to watch that with you guys soon as well. But yeah. Why do you do the legal thing of being right too early? What the hell is wrong with you? Are you evil or something? Yes, I am evil. I am evil. Okay? That's what it is. That's what motherfucking is. Okay? Anyway, let's get started. This is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan. Now, originally, the title was, This is Why There's a Dr. Jihad. Just kidding. The original title was Hassan Piker is not your enemy, right? Hassan Piker is not your enemy, with the original title here. And a lot of people are picking some choice quotes out of this, okay? Great piece overall. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to read it with you guys. And a necessary one that is ultimately very consequential. and one that also vindicates me even in this community, because for years, a lot of you have been very angry at Ezra Klein for good reason. I have my disagreements with Ezra Klein. I've let him know. I've let him be known time and time again. But I always maintain the position that he is far more responsive and far more open-minded than the average liberal is, right? Like, I've always said, I don't know what it is about Ezra Klein, but I think there's something about Ezra Klein that you know, regardless of his liberalism, as firmly planted his heels on the gospel of neoliberalism, or at least like he's more open-minded to and more responsive to, you know, what the fuck is on, right? I said, I have my opinion with Ezra Klein, but I appreciate this thoughtfulness on the discussion around reducing ideological opponents to 10-second quotes, platforming, and of course, the reality that the Israel discourse has shifted out of the old constructs mainstream media clings onto. Right? This was the most hypocritical post. You live in tropes, sound bites, and racism as an anti-American neo-baby. Neo-baby? What is a neo-baby? I'm a neo-baby? Like a baby that just is a new kind of baby? The fuck's this guy saying? Jim Walden got so mad. He didn't write Nepo baby. He wrote Neo baby, who wants Marxism but chose to come back to America rather than going to Lebanon, Gaza, or remaining in Turkey. I said this plainly. America doesn't deserve ... you. Yeah, I mean, I don't think America got me, baby. You know what I mean? That's Vicky Palladino's lawyer. Yeah. It is pretty funny. Opposite of paleo, baby. Yeah, true. Stop coping. He got you good, Ugh. Yeah, he destroyed me. Neo, baby. I've never heard that before. I do not like that Ezra basically says in the article that ethno-states are a normal thing. Yeah. We have our disagreements. Pick and choose. You choose. All right? It's fine. You have to understand. He's not going to come out and write an article and be like, Yahya Sinwar is like vindicated or do that. What are you, fucking nuts? This is an important moment because he is, in many respects, saying the truth. Okay? And unfortunately, in this day and age, saying the truth requires courage. It's important. It's an important step in the right direction. I'm not going to fucking cast aside. I'm not going to just like shit on him for doing, okay? I'm not going to shit on him for doing that, especially when he could have just as easily leaned in or never said anything about this or just as easily leaned into the same exact narratives over and over again. This is an important step in the right direction. Okay? This is an important step in the right direction. You have to be more graceful and more gracious when you receive these kinds of gifts, okay? Because sometimes if everyone is saying the truth is a gift, okay? I mean, ethno-states are, fortunately, a lot of states are ethno-states, but Israel's unique part is being an ethno-state while occupying an equal number of people who are not of that ethnicity. Yes. Also, ethno-states are not good regardless and are inherently self-defeating. One of the best examples of this is obviously Japan, right? That's itself maintain its ethno-state status. So what more do you want to see? I mean, there are living, breathing examples of how, the maintenance of it ends up being totally untenable, right? All right, this is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan. Let's get started. It's a 12-minute, 55-second article. After the 2024 elections, there was panic among Democrats about the absence of a liberal Joe Rogan. Could one be found? Could one be created? It was an epic exercise in missing the point. You cannot have a liberal Joe Rogan because Rogan is not particularly political. His audience cohered around conversations with comedians, MMA fighters, bodybuilders, and psychonauts. That's what made him politically influential. He could reach millions of people who were not otherwise interested in politics. The problem Democrats actually had, one of them anyway, was that they didn't like Rogan and criticize others for going on his show. They tried repeatedly to cancel him for his comments about trans people, his skepticism about COVID vaccines. To the extent that he is now a right-coded figure, it's not because he started that way. Rogan's political views are mixed. He backed Bernie Sanders in 2020. He supports universal health care and abortion rights. He dislikes vaccine mandates and lacks border control. But it shouldn't have been a surprise when, after years being attacked by the left, he endorsed Donald Trump in 2024. The simplest way to tell people which side they're on is to tell them how much your side hates them. Now, I don't even fully agree with this assessment, right? although I agree with the spirit of being a little bit more tactful in the way that we communicate, and this is something that the left also absolutely needs to understand, internalize when you're trying to build a fucking coalition. Because think about it this way: if I was, constantly bouldering Ezra Klein, bad, less interest in taking a sincere look at, what I put out. It's just we do honestly have a problem sometimes where we behave very antisocially. You don't have to concede on these people's worldview at all, right? Not the same as Rogan. No, I mean, I have critical of Joe Rogan, but there was never a moment where I was like, I can't believe Bernie Sanders would go on Joe Rogan. Whenever people brought that up, I was like, shut the fuck up. Of course he's going to go on Joe Rogan. He's trying to win, he's trying to win right? Like, I obviously am unbelievably Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan will never have me on his show for that reason, right? But the reality of the matter is, it's important for people to go on Joe Rogan. I would go on Joe Rogan if asked. I would go on Tucker Carlson if asked, right? Like, I don't have any issues with that at all. Many in this community would have an issue with that. They say, you're platforming, you're normalizing him. Because, we have our convictions, and sometimes we forget that, person to person, peer to communication requires you to be a little bit normal and to dance around to the view get. Okay. Joe Rogan doesn't ask people, they ask to be on. Yeah, no, I know. All right. That brings me to a more important than it might look controversy that has burst out over the leftist streamer Hassan Piker. He had a breakout moment over the past year as Democrats began obsessing over the absence of a liberal Joe Rogan, and Piker, who mixes leftist policies with a bro-ish aesthetic, was proffered as a possible answer, a category error, because, again, the whole point of Rogan's political power is that his show mostly avoids politics. But pick over Piker's years of streaming, and you can find offensive things he said, among them that America deserved 9/11, that his favorite flag is Hezbollah's, that a liberal Zionist is akin to a liberal Nazi. Now, that last two even, is not, offensive to me or others as well. But, I guess offensive perspective of the kind-hearted liberals, the New York Times opinion editorial section on a Sunday morning. Streamer has said offensive things isn't a news story. But then Abdullah Sayed, the more DSA-ish candidate in the Democratic Senate primary in Michigan, began rallying with Piker. That led Third Way, a centrist group that previously demanded that Democrats draw a line in the sand and shun Hassan Piker and his fellow Jew haters, to send a letter to al-Sayed demanding details about how closely you align with his most abhorrent views. Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the Anti-Defamation League, also known as the Apartheid Defense League, said Piker reflected the dangerous normalization of anti-Semitism in our politics. Politico then asked a number of possible 2028 Democratic hopefuls whether they would appear on Piker's show. Governor Gavin Newsom and Rahm Emanuel said they would. Representatives Ro Khanna and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez already had. Senator Cory Booker, Ruben Gallego, and Elisa Slotkin said they wouldn't. I think there's rather a lot wrapped up in this controversy, so let's take it piece by piece. Immediately goes into it and cuts away at the whole thing. He says, is Piker a Jew, as Third Way alleges? In an interview with the writer Aaron Regenberg, Piker addressed some of his worst comments. I find some of his answers compelling and others less so. The comparison of liberal Zionists to Nazis, for instance, is repugnant and not much improved by Piker clarifying that he opposes ethno-states. What made the Nazis notable wasn't their support for an ethno-state. Ethno-states are common. What made the Nazis notable was their effort to exterminate the Jewish people. And Piker's assertion that his opposition is to all reactionary ideology is hard to square with his admiration for Hezbollah. Okay, two things. So this is his with the way I've presented myself. Here's the issue. The reason why I say Israel is a Nazi country or Zionism is a Nazi ideology is because that is the truth. It's a reactionary, nationalistic, fascist ideology akin to Christian nationalism that we experience here in the United States of America. It's base boosted because Israel has been carrying out that violence that is the undergirding ideology of the state for Israel to exist, a Jewish state that is built on top of millions of Palestinians, many of which are not Jewish. You have to ethnically cleanse those Palestinians, and that's precisely how it works, right? there are plenty of states that have been designed as ethno-states or turned into ethno-states. Like Japan is one of the greatest modern examples of this, right? Japan also did its own indigenous genocide in an effort to create an ethno-state, right? It's true, except modern day liberals and modern day socialists and leftists and progressives alike do not agree with those actions. Those actions of the past, just like we don't agree with the actions of the Nazis, and therefore we must not agree with the actions of Israel when it's happening in front of us, right? The whole point of learning about history, the whole point of learning about the Holocaust, the whole point of learning about, the dangers of fascism is so don't fucking repeat it. It's at the core of this principle. Never again means never again for all, not just never again for Jewish people, right? So that's the point. That is why I oppose it. Now, I would love to have a conversation with Ezra Klein about this particular issue because I find it very interesting that he's like very thoughtful, but this is a glaringly blindside that he demonstrates, and he demonstrated that with his Ta-Nehisi Coates conversation as well. I think he's moved since then as well, but even then, there's an element there. There's a blind spot there where it's like I grew up with this ideology. I learned about it, and it's like impossible for me, knowing everything that it's impossible for me to see it as anything but. And it's a glaringly obvious moral inconsistency that he actually reveals later when he's talking about. Didn't say blind spot? What did I say? Did I say blind side? Yeah, blind spot. Turkey's pretty broadly recognized an ethno-state by scholars, but you don't see leftists defending Turkey's erasure of ethnic minorities on the regular. Exactly, and I don't do it either, right? The thing about Israel is that it is exceptional. Like, what Israel is doing is exceptional. A lot of people try to say, oh, everyone's done it, without explaining that, yeah, they did it in okay? or one of the more contemporary, more modern examples of this is, the Holocaust. So these are things that roundly criticized, like routinely condemned. It's one of the few that most historians agree, alongside chattel slavery and the Holocaust, that was like unbelievably evil. It's historians rarely look at that have transpired and then turn around and some kind of sentiment to it. They don't say this is bad, right? Usually, but those are the two things that they openly say are bad. Aaron Regenberg also had a take on Ezra's ethno-states existing, but we'll get to second. Actually, you know what? I'll just read it. Aaron Regenberg also wrote that New Republic piece, which I never would have thought would reach Ezra Klein's eyes. So I am happy that it did, right? Because when I did that, I genuinely thought, I like Aaron. I think it's very clear that he wants to try to help. The Republic. I know Daniel wrote one in The Nation as well, specifically addressing the smears, the accusations about my anti-Semitism. And both of these guys were trying to communicate to an audience, but it's Nation, it's the New Republic. You're preaching to the converted, right? Most part. So I didn't think that would impact. I mean, I'm eternally grateful for him saying the truth, right? Because the reality of the matter is, it is objectively a courageous act. It shouldn't be, but it is a courageous act to say the truth sometimes. Right? He says, I'm grateful for Ezra Klein's super thoughtful column today, and also appreciate that he referenced a piece I wrote on Hassan, but I need to make one, in my opinion, corrective point. Ezra wrote, what made the Nazis notable wasn't their support for an ethno-state. Ethno-states are common. What made the Nazis notable was their effort to exterminate the Jewish people. I think Ezra would probably agree, if push came to shove, that the Nazis were notable before their launch of the final solution in 1941. It'd be fair to say what made the Nazis most notable, but what made the Nazis notable is just not really defendable as a precise statement of fact. It's true. The mechanized death of all of the Holocaust, 6 million Jews and millions of others as well, that is what made the Nazis the most notable. But they were certainly notable before that, right? The Nazis were the Nazis in 1933. and 1935 and 1939, etc. They were bad and they were worth opposing before they began their effort to exterminate the Jewish people. And I don't think it makes much sense to say we can only analogize them or learn lessons about them post 1941. And that's kind of an important point, because that's precisely what we are doing, right? That's precisely what we are doing. We're trying to stop fascism from taking root to reach its, worse conclusions. And for Israel, it has reached that. Israel has already reached the concentration camp, death camp, Holocaust status. That and they've done so in broad daylight. Which is also crazy. Ezra Klein says Tom Piker at least comes out with the correct position, but this idea that we're dealing with a different Israel today ignores the fact that the romanticized Israel older people remember was established with the Nakba. Exactly. That's precisely what it is, right? That is the significant difference in opinion between someone like myself, an anti-Zionist, and someone like Ezra Klein, who at least is like more open-minded to the anti-Zionist than the average liberal Zionist is, because the average liberal Zionist is completely either dropped the whole liberalism element of it and is maybe only coming back to it like J Street is in an effort to like hold on to whatever allegiance that America continue having with the nation state of Israel, right? But let's keep going, because this part, just one aspect of it, because he's going to, turn around and I full article chat. I know. But to only focus on those comments is to miss much else that Piker has said and believes. He has also said, from pogroms to the Holocaust, Jews have always been singled out by those in power as a scapegoat for the instability and economic volatility that people in power caused. A resilient, nascent anti-Semitism is a constant threat. He has called anti-Semitism gross, immoral, and a hate crime. He has promoted John Ossoff, a Democratic senator from Georgia who is Jewish, as a 2028 presidential possibility. In previous presidential primaries, Piker supported Bernie Sanders, who is also Jewish. It is an unusual form of Jew hatred that calls out anti-Semitism and promotes Jewish Americans for the presidency. I have deep disagreements with Piker, but he isn't a Jew hater. He's an anti-Zionist. And here, I think, the real stakes of this fight come into view. We are living through a rupture in both the meaning and the reality of Israel. A Gallup poll from February found, for the first time, that more Americans sympathize with the Palestinians than with the Israelis. Among Democrats, the gap was overwhelming, with 65% who sympathized more with the Palestinians and 17% with the Israelis. The difference, as I have argued, is largely generational. Older Americans still view the Israelis more sympathetically, but among Americans aged 18 to 34, 53% sided with the Palestinians and 23% with the Israelis. This is new. Before 2023, young people and Democrats were more likely to side with the Israelis. This is not a result of an international psyop or a profusion of memes. The Israel that young people know is not the Israel that older people remember. Now, this gives Ezra Klein's perspective a little bit more clarity, right? Because I've been here for the last decade and a half professionally in my career as an anti-Zionist, as an open, avowed anti-Zionist, right? The old Israel is still the new Israel. The new Israel is just accelerated and is doing this in broad daylight. It's accelerated its mowing of the lawn operations. It's accelerated its domination and complete annexation of the West Bank. But those wounds continued. Those strikes continued in the old Israel. It's just that the media environment and the perception of the Western world of old Israel was the country that dominated all of the Arabs. Okay, all the pesky Arabs that got together and fight the Jewish state over and over again was met with fierce resistance, right? Like that was the attitude. A lot of boomers are still on that mindset. They don't recognize Israel as an apartheid state that is conducting a genocide, that's taking over Lebanon, taking over territory in Syria, that is endlessly expanding and is a danger to all of its neighbors and to all civilians, and even a danger to its own citizens as well, if you care about that sort of thing. So, been the case, it's just now virtually impossible to avoid that reality. Okay? For many who did not grow up with the old Israel, the only moral nation in the Middle East, the only democracy in the Middle East mentality, which was a lie, right? For many who only know Israel as the genocidaire state, who only know Israel through the arrogance that its envoys demonstrate, who only know Israel through Israel's domestic interest in the United States of America, constant demands for cancellations, constant demands for doxing people, constant demands for firing people, for turning around and saying something that a lot of people saw with their own two eyes, that Israel is a malignant actor in this region and a malignant force in American politics, right? For simply supporting Palestine, for simply supporting Palestinian sovereignty. It doesn't happen anymore. That was the first experience that many people had, and they will never change their mentality. It is never going back, right? Ezra Klein changed the Hassan opinion title 9 minutes ago. Guys, please, it doesn't fucking matter, okay? Ezra Klein has no say on the title changes, okay? Title changes are editorial decisions made by the editorial board of the opinion editorial team in the New York Times, and the title changes don't matter, okay? Let's continue. They're A/B testing different titles. We do it as well. It's normal. It responded to the savagery of October 7 by flattening in a brutal campaign that killed at least 70,000 Gazans, taking control of more than half the territory, and herding Gazans, more than 2 million people, into the remainder. Life there remains hellish. Israel has made hopes of a two-state solution fanciful by slicing the West Bank up into Israeli settlements and abetting constant settler violence and keeping a boot on the throat of the Palestinian Authority. It has used the Iran war as an opportunity to launch an invasion of Lebanon, displacing more than 1 million people and announcing that as many as 600,000 won't be allowed to return to their homes until Israel decides otherwise. The Knesset just voted to legalize hanging as a punishment for Palestinians who are convicted of killing Israelis in terrorist attacks. This is, on the one hand, even the language that he uses, this is something that Ta-Nehisi Coates also out. If you remember in that conversation that they had almost a year and a half ago, where Ta-Nehisi said, you always say the more militant forces on the Palestinian side are savages, but you never use similar language when you're talking about the Israeli side. The Israeli side is still a democracy, right? It still has that consideration of existing as a liberal democracy. So if it's a democratic decision that Likud is abiding by, they are simply operating on the majority's desires. Okay? Yeah, he says right-wing extremists when it comes to Israelis, including the settlers, savagery and barbarians when it comes to Hamas, when it comes to the Palestinian resistance, right? People are still people. Those Palestinians still had dreams, they had hopes, right? They had goals, just as the Israelis do. So that's something to consider. That's an implicit bias that comes out in moments like this. I'm obviously not going to lean into it too much because this stuff is far more important to have in the New York Times op-ed piece, right? Part of that racism is part of the state versus non-state dynamic that almost everyone subscribes to, even though you still hear it or don't hear it nearly the same language you hear for Hamas or Hezbollah as you do for Iran. Yes, we have obviously addressed this many times over on this broadcast. Americans have this established attitude about state versus state violence versus as opposed to state non-state and who gets to do violence and what that violence is perceived as. Israel is a nation state. Israel is a democracy. When they behave in certain ways, no matter how violent it is, no matter how unbelievably violent it is, we think of it as like an expression of democracy, of the democratic process in Israel, right? That's precisely the reason why it's very different. It's a very different calculation when you got a foreign minister who can speak to Americans, an Iranian foreign minister who can go on American television and demonstrate that, you know, he has multiple fucking PhDs. All of a sudden, Americans can hear from him. Attitude is developed in that process, right? That's why it's huge that Benjamin Netanyahu is from Philadelphia. Like, this is a very consequential element. I promise you, it plays a major role. That's why he does the Hebrew language Hebrew language proposals, and then he does the English one. And I always tell you, there's key differences in the way that he communicates to the Western world versus the way he communicates to the Israeli population, right? Anyway, third way suggests you can identify Jew haters by their use of loaded words taught in social justice seminars: apartheid, genocide, settler colonialism. If that is the test, then a large number of American Jews now fail it. Israel, as it is behaving today, and as it is constructing itself for tomorrow, is incompatible with any normal understanding of liberal values. That's it. That's the fucking truth nuke. That's also the contradictory statement that he contradicts with his previous statement of like liberal Zionism is also liberal, where he goes, ethno-states exist. That is correct. That is correct. It's just is utterly incompatible with modern day liberalism. It's utterly incompatible with modern rules of conduct, modern rules of warfare, rules of engagement. It is siege warfare that most people thought we left behind in like the fucking 15th century. America's bringing it back too. And obviously, a lot of Israel defenders will say, what are you talking about? It's because if there's no Jews, there's no news, right? Like, look at Sudan, look at Sudan. Now, the difference there is twofold, okay? What is happening in Sudan is heinous. It's a genocide. It's backed by the United Arab Emirates and therefore, in some ways, backed by Israel as well and Western forces, or at least Western governments turn a blind eye to these atrocities. But that's not because there's no Jews involved in that situation. That's because the United Arab Emirates doesn't have as pervasive of a fucking lobby in the United States of America that constantly demands you get fired from your job for saying what's going on in Sudan is a genocide. Ironically enough, it is the pro-Israeli groups and institutions that have created this kind of resistance against Israel in the United States of America, right? That's a big part of it because Americans are somewhat selfish people, right? That's it. Because there are atrocities unfolding all around the world. The other key difference is, and this is precisely the reason why those pro-Israel groups have to exist in the Western world, is because Israel is carrying out these atrocities with our weapons. Israel is carrying out these atrocities with our unlimited funds and our unlimited defense, both political defense at the United Nations General Assembly, but also with direct defense in the form of Tamir interceptors, for example, THAAD missile launchers, anti-air defense systems, sometimes directly putting our soldiers on the line, their lives on the line to defend the nation state of Israel. That's the key difference. That's a huge difference. Okay, this will be clipped out of context and you will see it in the news XD. Wait, what? I don't know what you are even pointing to because nothing I said is wrong. Do you understand? Like, I'm of this mindset that if Belgium was doing what it used to do in the Congo, right? Like right now, and America was like, no, you have to do that. This has to happen. We have to also forcibly put Belgians in there, and establish settlements and stuff like that. Yeah, there would probably be similar anger and resentment. That's how it is. There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River, Benjamin Netanyahu said. For years, I have prevented the creation of that terror state against tremendous pressure, both domestic and from abroad. We have done this with determination and with astute statesmanship. That exact paragraph in the article is why you can't be a liberal Zionist. There's no such thing. Yeah, I mean, you can be, but it's just like there's varying degrees of fascist sentiment, right? And it exists in America as well. I'm going to always bring it back to America. Like you have Christian nationalists, white supremacists. You have varying degrees of people who demonstrate that kind of like underlying racist sentiment, anti-blackness, anti-immigrant sentiment, things of that nature, right? Not every single person is going to be maxed out on the fucking Nazi spectrum. And it's no different on liberal Zionism versus ultra Zionism as well, right? That's how it is. Some of you know people in your lives who are otherwise very kind people, but have these like massive fucking blind spots when it comes to, I don't know, the way that they approach black people, for example, right? Like maybe they don't act out on those desires, luckily, but they still have those opinions, right? Like they still carry a little bit of that resentment, a little bit of that fear, the unjustifiable fear. Our goal here is to identify that and tackle it, right? Identify that, combat it, help people come to better conclusions, right? That's how systemic racism exists. All right? And it's not different for Zionism. Like, I deal with fucking people who have, you know, fascist adjacent beliefs on a daily fucking basis. I try to convince them. And it's the same for liberal Zionists as well. So it's very frustrating to me when people make it seem like there is this otherized status when I say, when I say liberal Zionism is akin to liberal Nazism, people go, how dare you say that? Right? How dare you? It's not that different from, you know, liberals that might have some racialized animus as well, right? There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. For years, I've prevented the creation of a terrorist state. We've done this determination with this two-statesmanship. Moreover, we've doubled the Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path. Anti-Zionism is a rising response to what Israel is doing. Well, it's a response to what Israel was doing and is still doing, right? It will simply not be possible to treat it as a marginal viewpoint that can be shamed or shunned into invisibility. Yes, anti-Semitism often cloaks itself in anti-Zionism, so don't do the anti-Semites work for them. If you keep telling people that this is bars. If you keep telling people that they oppose the Jewish state, then they must hate Jewish people, eventually they will believe you. Felix Biederman in the last Chapo episode put this in less kind terms, where he said, if you think Hassan Piker is an anti-Semite and you want to cast him aside, even though he cares about anti-Semitism 8,000 times more than I do, Felix said this as a Jewish man, you're not going to like what comes next. Okay? He's right. It's unbelievable that they're still playing this fucking idiotic game. They're just not even recognizing it. Right? The impulse to cut those off with whom we disagree reaches far beyond Piker or the Israel-Palestinian debate. It sits at the heart of cancellation as a political tactic. It relies on a belief in the power of gatekeepers that might have been true in an earlier age, but no longer reflects as the way attention is earned and held. Tucker Carlson was ejected from Fox News and grew stronger on X and YouTube. Nick Fuentes was banned from major social media platforms and gathers strength in the shadows. Trump went from being banned by every major social media platform to retaking the presidency. But it's not just cancellation. It's not just that cancellation has failed to silence those it targeted. It also weakened those who used it. The Democratic Party and the progressive movement was ill-served by the belief that it could decide the boundaries of acceptable debate. In narrowing who it could talk to, it limited what it could hear and whom it could be heard by. I haven't been on Rogan's show, but I've been on some of the shows in that broader universe, like Andrew Schultz's Flagrant and Lex Friedman's podcast. I was surprised by how frustrated the hosts were about their inability to book Democrats in 2024. They had said things that the broader progressive universe disliked or had conversations with people who were anathema to the left. And so Democrats largely avoided these podcasts, ceding them to the Trump campaign. This was not only bad politics, but also bad Democratic practice. These shows had come from nowhere and had gained millions of loyal listeners. They had earned their viewership by voicing something that made millions of Americans feel seen, heard, or at least interested. In avoiding those places, Democrats avoided contact with the kinds of voters they otherwise claimed to represent. This is the mistake Democrats often make when they talk about what they did wrong in 2024. They realize now that they should try to talk to the people who listen to these shows. They are less likely to realize that they should listen to the people who talk on these shows. They realize now that they should try to talk to the people who listen to these shows. They are less likely to realize that they should listen to the people who talk on these shows. Beneath this is an important principle. Conversation is not a reward to be bestowed on those with whom we agree. It's a necessary habit in democracy. The point is not to find agreement so much as to deepen understanding, theirs and your own. Whether you like everything that someone has said should be severed from the question of whether that person is worth talking to. Okay? We here on the left do this as well, and obviously I don't entertain it. And I think that's a major difference that I have with a lot of other people, and people will constantly look for other reasons as to why I do that, right? Other reasons as to why I do that, where they're like, oh, there's got to be some ulterior motive here. It's because he's hungry for clout or whatever. It's like, no, I will talk to anyone and everyone, no matter where they are. I'm not going to compromise on my values, but I will try to convince not only my interlocutor, but also my interlocutor's audience that might not have actually ever encountered my perspective, and certainly not encountered my perspective without filters. Right? Yes, we're going to talk about Orban in a second. The space for such conversations was once wider. Wait, what did I... The point is not to find agreement as much as to deepen understanding. To talk with others is to believe in the possibility of change, theirs and your own. Whether you like everything that someone has said should be severed from the question of whether that person is worth talking to. The space for such conversations was once wider. In 1968, William F. Buckley Jr., the arch-conservative founder of National Review, hosted Eldridge Cleaver, the Minister of Information for the Black Panthers, on the firing line. Neither man was there to endorse the other's politics. I should like to begin by asking Mr. Cleaver whether he finds it inconsistent with his ideology to encourage the assassination of Mr. Richard Nixon, Buckley said. Cleaver's answer: I would say that if Richard Nixon was assassinated, it would only result in having another pig in line who possibly would need to be assassinated. Bars. Buckley later hosted Cleaver at his home. It was a different time, but it created a lasting artifact. The interview has hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube and remains riveting to watch. Are there people I won't have on my shows or shows I won't go on? Sure. But those judgments, for me, are more about what I think will be productive rather than who I think can be included. Similarly, I wouldn't judge Booker or Gallego or Slotkin for avoiding Piker's show. They're busy people, and it may not be how they want to spend their time. But there's something strange about aspiring to lead the country's left-wing coalition and elevating the avoidance of prominent leftists to a matter of principle. That's all the more true now, as attention isn't bestowed on the chosen few by television networks and newspaper editors. It's won or lost in a ferocious marketplace that rewards outrage and controversy. The winners of the attention wars today are typically people who said some outrageous things in the past or are still saying them in the present. When you're dealing with podcasters or streamers who talk unstructured, unrehearsed for hours each week, if not every day, there's going to be so much said that it's almost inevitable that a dossier of dumb statements can be compiled. To write those people out of acceptable political discourse is to back yourself into a shrinking, sanitized corner of the public sphere. This part is also huge. This part is also fucking huge. Yeah, I know. Peter Magyar won the Hungarian elections. Okay, I'm gonna talk about it. Jesus, Lord mercy, it's so funny that people are so ecstatic. Okay, yes. Viktor Orban is down. Okay, I know. Here, I'll put it in the title too. Orban for prison. Orban for prison 2028. Orban for prison 2026. We'll do a crab dance in a second. Let me just go through this, please. Booker admitted on Pod Save America that when he said he would never go on Piker's show, he had never heard of Piker. His communications director had read him a list of the 4 or 5 worst things Piker has said, and Booker used that as the basis for his response. Booker got piled on for that admission, but I appreciated the honesty. That is, in practice, a version of how many of us make our judgments. Algorithmic media is an engine of motivated decontextualization. We see other people in snippets that serve the agendas of those who cut them. We are fed 30-second clips shorn from multi-hour streams, 2-sentence quotes ripped from long conversations, old comments that obscure subsequent change. We have to be careful about being lulled into believing these shards represent anyone's whole person. We should not be afraid of finding out who those people are, of seeking to change them, or of allowing ourselves to be changed by them. That is fucking bars. It is fundamentally what I believe as well. It is at the heart of my politics. It is one of the things that I constantly say, and I'm glad that a liberal is saying that. Okay. I'm glad that a liberal is saying that at a time when, let's be real, this kind of cynical standpoint epistemology and identity politics and cancellation attempts are the tool of the right. Okay. The right will always use that to their left flank. The right will cynically apply this to the likes of Gavin Newsom, as we saw, right? But then the center right of the Democratic Party has consistently used this as a tool, as a weapon to destroy their left flank as well. Bernie Sanders was victim to this, right? A guy who has been on the right side of history for most of his life, if not his entire life, that spans across multiple centuries at this point. He's 800 years old, okay? And liberals cynically presented him, painted him as this monstrous person, this like this figure of reactionary sentiment, this anti-black, anti-woman, misogynist, all this stuff. Ridiculous. Rotimi Adeoye says, honestly, everyone keeps talking about this woke 2.0 thing, but the Hassan Piker discourse has convinced me that the second iteration of this in 2028 will be far more nasty than the 2020 campaign because of the idea policing and PC-sensitive crowd will be more aggressive. Like the screen grab is going to look like light work when 2028 happens. I don't think so. And a candidate is apologizing for an influencer that worked years ago who said one off-color thing, and people are trying to burn this candidate forever about it. Will be interesting. I don't think so. I think if our forces win, then I don't believe that this will happen, and I hope that they will, right? Because it's objectively silly. It's self-defeating. It doesn't, it betrays how normal people think and how normal people operate. It doesn't make any sense to behave like that, right? Democrats do need to open up and improve and open up conversation. But in the example follow that Mr. Klein gives, there's an enormous difference between William F. Buckley's time and ours. Eldridge Cleaver would almost be certainly arrested and imprisoned under our current regime. I mean, I think, as a Black Panther back then, he was also under significant threat. The American government was assassinating its leadership. So Democrats do not need a liberal Joe Rogan. They need a Franklin Delano Roosevelt banger. Last night, I, a Jew, and a Jewish friend, both Gen Xers, were bemoaning the state of Middle Eastern politics. We grew up planting trees in Israel, and like many of our generation, have steadfastly defended that country against its detractors, even when the detractors were right. Now we both feel that Israel, like Donald Trump's America, isn't defensible. We can't just twist ourselves into the necessary pretzels for such an exercise. We're not happy about that. We don't feel somehow liberated. It's incredibly sad. But there are some things we simply can't buy, and Israel is now one of those things. Like it or not, the Jewish diaspora in Israel are tied at the hip. We're expected to support Israel financially, militarily, spiritually, no matter what. Indeed, we are shunned by our community if we don't. The government of Israel also demands this blind allegiance, and yet, where is my vote? Do I get a say in whether Ben-Gvir or Smotrich sits in the Knesset or on the cabinet? Israel wants my money and my fealty, but not my opinion. Well, I have news for my Israeli brothers and sisters. I have an opinion, and it isn't a good one. Ooh, that's a Gen Xer. Remember, that's like outside of the younger demos, right? Because you all in here, the Jewish anti-Zionists in this community obviously have encountered a Gen Xer in your lives that definitely is not that open-minded, right? So that's huge. Larry, but we don't send $4.8 billion, provide diplomatic cover, and veto legitimate UN sanctions for other countries. Great column. I'm frustrated by Democrats who refuse to campaign everywhere and who can't see the enormous opportunity of reaching voters listening to the hosts whom they disagree. It's quite simple to understand that people understand when they are being condescended to. Tim Walz, former football coach, not going on the Joe Rogan to yab it out for Kamala in 2024 will always bewilder me. He would have been a perfect Democrat for Rogan's audience to hear from. I agree with that as well. At Larry, for my entire 70-year life, this is like a reply to Larry, I guess, who like maybe, he deleted it in shame. Okay. A lot of people are just like dunking on Larry. For my entire 70-year life, the U.S. has had a unique and close connection with Israel that I once felt good about. Israel meant just for deeply persistent wrong people, the settler movement, the extreme right wing, and finally Netanyahu and the end of hopes for a two-state solution or just for Palestinians, and then killing 72,000 Palestinian civilians corroded and then severed that connection. Now I cannot support U.S. aid for Israel, and I feel deeply disappointed, hence the unique focus and degree of criticism. The 30-second clips Hassan is talking about are a huge part of the problem. This media fragmentation disproportionately targets women in politics where their tone or character is scrutinized and taken out of context far more than their actual policy platforms. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one that certainly favors, because in 30 seconds you can't understand everything that a person is about, right? You can't understand their full scope, the who they are as a person, right? What that format actually favors white dudes in many respects for that reason, because what can you pick up about a person? How can you make up your mind about a person? By looking at who they are, right? They hear, my name is Hassan, I'm Muslim, and I represent this worldview. They immediately lean to certain biases. They make up their minds about my perspective for that reason. It's the same when they see a woman, right? A black woman especially. It's the same when they see a black man. When you get, what is this? You're getting subtweeted by ContraPoints? What? Why? Oh my God. You knew this would happen, didn't you? That's why the HDS shitstorm didn't faze you? No, because the Hasanabi derangement syndrome that I have withstood and have experienced for the last almost decade at this point has prepared me for this moment. That's what it is. And it's prepared you for this moment as well, because all the stuff that people are bringing up, you've heard a million times over. You've heard people bring it up as though it's like a new thing, right? Oh, I just found this video. What the fuck is this? It's like, I've explained it away 1,000 times over, right? And it didn't work. And it especially doesn't work now because we're in a very different media environment. And it especially doesn't work now because we live in a very different environment, like an ideological environment where people are demanding more. People don't have the same implicit biases that favor the development and the protection of the nation state of Israel, right? So that's what it is. Yeah, most people are defending this. I bet most Democrats who object to Piker have never listened to his show. Instead, they've been presented with a few clips of the most outrageous things he has said and told themselves they want nothing to do with him. I saw this in real time on an episode of The Bulwark with Sarah Longwell and Tim Miller, hardly a left-wing show. She read out a series of Piker's quotes and argued why she wanted nothing to do with him. He was an irredeemable anti-Semite. There was nothing more to discuss. The whole conversation was a knee-jerk reaction to anything that smacked of criticizing Israel. It's horrific treatment of Palestinians before and October 7th. Dude, this is exactly what I was saying. You see? Ellen from Philadelphia, who is a Bulwark fan, saw what Sarah Longwell was saying about me, calling me an heinous anti-Semite, okay? And immediately went, I have heard this before. Do you understand? Do you understand why I kept saying over and over again, we're in a very different environment. We're very different media environment. People can actually see the full context now. They can come to me. But also very different ideological environment as well. Very different environment that hears outspoken critics of Israel and sees outspoken defenders of Israel call them anti-Semites for years and years and years. And they go, I've heard this before, right? This is precisely what I was talking about. It's part of the reason why I was like, I'm not worried about this shit, you know? And it's outside influence in American politics. In some circles, you're just not allowed to point out what Israel is doing, while the rest of us stand here horrified yet afraid to say too much, lest we be accused of being anti-Semitic. A brief reading of the comments of that video showed just how far apart Sarah was from her viewers. Unfortunately, Democrats are so afraid of offending the easily offended in the party that they don't know how to have honest conversations with people with whom they might have some disagreement, especially when it comes to Israel. It's really quite discouraging and not likely to build a larger coalition of the very people Democrats say they want and need to attract. There seems to be more policing on that issue than there is on anything else in the political discourse right now. It is not helpful. In this column is the answer to why progressives, of which I one, have lost so many voters and the solution to getting them back. But to accept this truth and start winning elections will require the very few human beings, the things very few human beings can do. Let go of the sense of superiority. It gives you a sense of self-esteem. Be genuinely open to dialogue with those you disagree with. Actually talk with them. And the hardest of all, be open to changing your mind. The path to power lies before you. So yeah, I think everyone's dunking on Larry. I suspect, judging by what people have said, judging how people have responded to Larry, I assume he was like, why does everybody care about Israel so much? You know, because everyone is like, yeah, you know, it's giving Jew hatred a little bit, sweetie. Remember, this is the New York Times subscription base, right? This is the New York Times editorial page. These are the people who wrote 524 comments so far on this article that just came out a couple hours ago. Okay? So just understand that this is not, the Hasanabi head constituency. Okay? These are the Barbaras and the Debras. These are the highly educated, urban and even sometimes suburban white liberals with a higher degree of educational attainment, and also ones that are financially better off. Okay, we're talking about the coastal elites that play a major role in the base of support for the Democratic Party, at the heart of the Democratic Party, the ones that go out and vote in the primaries, the ones that go out and vote in special elections. This is who is ride or die for the Dems. So for them to come out and lean into what Ezra is saying is huge. Something has changed. This is what I've been repeatedly explaining to you over and over again, and I've seen it with my own two eyes, right? The New York Times closed the comment section. They have almost 600 comments, so they turned it off. I was going to comment, but it shut down. Too many people supporting you. That drives the editors. No, they like the comments. I'm subscribing. They shut down the comments because it was too much. It backfired. I'm just a regular guy that wants to understand what the elites think. No. I think they do that normally. That's fine. In a couple hours once it comes out. I don't think that the editors hate clicks and conversation that takes place under their profiles, under their editorial pieces. Anyway, I must admit I was lost reading most of this article, as if I was continually caught in an ideological maze that I could not exit. The habits or mindsets I developed over the years of running a small organization were dismissive of abstract theoretical discussions that always focused on how to make the systems and personnel work better. Really, what the American voter is yearning for is a government that works, that repairs roads, provides decent health care, that keeps schools safe, that provides affordable childcare, housing, transportation. I could go on. But attending to the details and processes of a well-run organization leaves little time to debate or discuss the meaning and implications of the cultural vocabularies now circulating in the podcast circuit. If I have to choose between someone who, whatever their flaws, stands firmly against ethnic cleansing and genocide, and someone who, whatever their virtues, won't be unambiguously against these crimes and their perpetrator, my conscience requires me to side with Mr. Piker. That's the argument. That is the reason why when people were like, oh, Hassan, how do you feel in this moment? You're getting inundated with like smears and shit like that, right? I said, I don't feel lonely at this point. It doesn't matter, because the people who are choosing to present themselves as enemies of myself and this community are choosing to present themselves as enemies to the overwhelming majority of the population that has seen heinous acts of violence perpetrated with our tax dollars and demands change. It's a 90-10 issue, right? It's a fucking 90-10 issue. The moderates in the Democratic Party constantly complain we need to reach out to other voters and stop canceling each other, that the extremists in the party keep forcing them into unpopular positions. Then they run into a genuinely popular voice like Hassan Piker, and because he insults Israel and pushes Medicare for all, he needs to be canceled and ostracized. Even those ideas are much more popular than moderate positions like unlimited aid to Israel and no limits on drug prices. Who really are the extremists? This is also another attitude shift that is brewing. Okay? This is also important to understand. I believe it was Morris Katz who did the ad campaign for Zohran Mamdani and Fight Agency that had a really interesting podcast. Had a really interesting conversation on, I think it was the Nation's podcast, Fighting Fascism podcast, where he basically said, Americans think Trump is a moderate. It's true. They do. Americans think Zohran Mamdani is a moderate. Americans think Bernie Sanders is a moderate. Americans think Kamala Harris is a radical. Why? Now, of course, demographics play a role in this, but Zohran Mamdani is a brown guy, right? He's brown. He's Muslim. He's a socialist, and he's an anti-Zionist, right? So Kamala Harris is partially seen as a radical because she's a black woman from California, certainly plays a major role in that dynamic, as opposed to Donald Trump, who is an insane person and yet seen as a moderate from their own, from, the perspective of the base on his side. Now, why is that the case? Because Trump is a populist. He is a right-wing sloppulist that has been, especially in the first 2016 election, a heterodox Republican, right? He had a lot of positions that he advanced, like not touching Medicare, not touching Social Security, things like that, that were truly unique to the Republican position. Never been heard of before from any Republican, right? While simultaneously leaning heavily into, anti-immigrant sentiment and racism and things of that nature. So that is, yeah, I mean, this is it. Yep. This is like, it's a meme, but it's kind of how it works. Okay. The aristocrat political pundit class completely oblivious to how the median voter thinks. They're how you get situations like Kamala campaigning with Liz Cheney. Yeah. The average American thinks Kamala Harris is a radical because the only things that they've heard from Kamala Harris are choice quotes that the opposition has defined her as someone who is only invested in giving bottom surgeries, the Guatemalan undocumented migrants. Why does the median voter, why do the Mainers not see Graham Plattner as a radical, whereas the entire commentariat sees Graham Plattner's worldview as far too radical for the moderate to vote for? Why is that the case? Why is that the case? Why is there such a major disconnect with the way that the average voters perceive Graham Plattner versus the blue sky liberals and the commentariat and the way they see Graham Plattner? Because Graham Plattner is uncompromising in his advocacy for trans people, but Graham Plattner is offering every voter something that they can understand, that they can associate with. Graham Plattner is talking about affordability. Graham Plattner is talking about Medicare for all. Graham Plattner is talking about cutting ties with Israel. Okay? And he's not doing the political language around it either. He's not approaching the subject matter with the careful way that you normally hear from experienced politicians, right? That's it. That is the reason. What mainstream media has presented as radical propositions is a lie, especially when you look at how the median voter approaches that stuff. Mainstream media and the analysts and the people who are backed by corporate entities and corporate interests will tell you Medicare for all is a radical proposition. People don't want that. People are terrified of that. Okay? People are fucking terrified of that. They don't want it at all. Please don't advocate for that. And the politicians hear that and they go, yeah, that must be true. And a lot of liberals hear that and go, I'm internalizing that message. I agree with it as well. I'm a real Deborah, as you say. I'm 62 years old, college educated, New York Times, Hasanabi head, even a wine drinker. You've pegged me 100%. Exactly. Also, Debbie, you shouldn't say you've pegged me. That's, oh no. Hey, yo. That means something different around these parts. Okay. Yeah, near a tangent also had a tangent, near a tangent more like, right? And this was off of one of my choice quotes on the Podjons, where I said, I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a never Trumper, right?
You said you wouldn't vote for Gavin Newsom against J.D. Vance in 2028.
Yeah,
and you vote third party.
I mean, I don't even think that's going to be a problem.
Well, but like a lot of people, including people who share a lot of your critiques of the Democratic Party, hear that and think like this is the problem. You know, when the stakes are concrete, like a Vance presidency, another 4 years of what we're living through. You know, the people who say they're building a movement would, you know, like rather preserve their own power than, you know, do what winning requires and, you know, hold your nose and vote for what you believe would be the lesser of two evils. Like, how do you respond to that?
I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a never Trumper. I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a triple Trump voter, okay? Because it turns out that's all they're tuned into. So if what it takes for the Democrats to turn around and be like, wait a minute, we're losing this guy, we have to win him over again or whatever, instead of just like taking my vote for granted as they've done so over and over again for the left flank, then, you know, I'm going to say things that may or may not end up being true, but it doesn't matter. We're so far out from the election anyway that it's like I'm just saying, look, now is your opportunity to find a good candidate instead.
But you see as we head into these, that like after what we've lived through these last years, the stakes and the stark difference between even a Democrat who you and I might find not up to par, to say the least, versus Vance or whoever the fuck they put up.
Of course. I mean, I hate Republicans. I oppose them. I say that all the time. I think that the Republicans are far more damaging. The biggest terrorists, the biggest domestic terrorists in this country, the biggest terrorist internationally is the Republican Party. And not only that, but it's just like I want to fight against the growing fascist movement in this country. My frustration with the Democrats is their conciliatory attitude towards that and their lack of investment in this struggle. This idea that, you know, on the one hand, you say Donald Trump's a dangerous force. I see that. I recognize that. But then you turn around and you take on his anti-immigrant narratives and anti-immigrant messaging from the 2020 election that you won and decide you're going to be the sincere candidate that ends up, dealing with the growth of migration in this country. It's a failure. If you were serious about being an anti-fascist, if you were serious about combating these forces, you would take it more seriously. Nira Tana said, the Never Trumpers treat the Democratic Party a lot better than Piker does. I said, I voted actively door knock for, fundraised, platform Dems, and progressive cause for the last decade and a half while they were working to oppose your agenda. The issue is you have more in common with them than you do with me, and that's the problem you're facing right now. To which he responded with, perhaps there's a semantic difference here. Never Trumpers champion Kamala, even though they disagree with her on a lot of policies. They did so because they saw the stakes of the election and how things like this utter disaster of the last year could happen. They also championed Biden and Hillary for the same reason. I'm glad you work for so many progressive causes, but saying you see no difference in Kamala and Trump and blasting that out to millions helped Trump. And 2024 was an existential election. Now, maybe those statements were taken out of context. Happy to engage in conversation anytime. Okay? Here's the thing. The Never Trumpers didn't have to get concessions because they got those concessions ahead of time with the way that Kamala Harris presented herself. This is the problem. And these people don't want to understand that. It's not just parading around with Liz Cheney. It's also saying things like, I'm gonna command the most lethal military at the DNC, refusing to have a Palestinian speaker at the DNC, refusing to have a trans speaker at the DNC. What you communicate in the finite amount of time that you have, 107 days, to win an election with your campaign is important. It's consequential. And the Democrats actively communicated to the Never Trump agenda. They actively communicated to try to win over the suburbanites, the white, relatively well-off suburban voters. Okay? That's it. That's it. Yeah, you literally have 25,000 hours of anti-Republican commentary. You shouldn't really have to door knock. Yeah, I mean, look, it's also silly to say like, oh, you just only say that Trump and Kamala Harris are the same over and over again. It's a blanket statement that you're applying that absolutely betrays the nuance of my analysis, my commentary. It's a totally ridiculous thing to keep slapping on over and over again. My anger and resentment was Kamala Harris's methods of communication, where she was trying to present herself as somewhat Trumpian on a lot of the issues that matter. That's the problem. That's the problem. Anyway. Yeah, we're building the wall after 8 years of saying, you know, the wall is a racist and unnecessary expenditure. Turning around and being like, we're going to be the build the wall party now. Trump is not sincere about building the wall. It's fucking ridiculous. Right? It's totally ridiculous. You do that, people are going to look at you and go, you're inconsistent, you're a failure, you're weak. And now I believe what you're telling me, right? Maybe we do need to build a wall. Maybe immigrants are a national security threat. Maybe Trump is right. I'm going to vote for the guy who's been right all along then. I'm not going to vote for you. I'm going to vote for the other guy. That is the calculation. You're pushing people to vote for your opposition when you concede on the hysteria that they've concocted. Yeah, I think back to that 60 Minutes interview where Harris said Iran was the biggest threat to America, and I cringe. Exactly. You can't get away with like saying shit like that over and over again, presenting yourself as like a war hawk, and then get mad when Trump took advantage of that to turn around and say, oh, see, I'm actually the peace candidate. I'm a peaceful dove. Look, they're running around with Liz Cheney. They're saying they're accepting the endorsement of Dick Cheney, right? It's fucking ridiculous. Don't try to rewrite the history, okay?
I totally agree with this, but I wish more of this big tent energy was directed at people who drove Jared Golden and Joe Manchin out of Congress rather than the meta discourse about podcasts. Oh my God, Matt Iglesias. Yeah, no, the Democrats are not conciliatory enough to the right-wing forces within the party. The Klein essay on Piker is good because it might be the first time someone with a large platform says this. We don't talk to people we disagree with. Mindset is new. It took off post-2016 with the rise of political correctness. The activists of the past did not act like this. And it's ironic because when American politics was more openly racist, sexist, people were actually arguing more. That open conflict is part of how things changed and improved over time. People saw the disagreement and allowed them to decide their beliefs, which helped the left. I don't understand how people who want society to improve expect to get there by refusing to engage with opposing views. You can't change minds if you won't talk to them. Enjoy the echo chamber, but it's just not going to change your community or the world. And just dismissing people as white men podcasters that engaging their arguments is not serious. If you're putting ideas into public discourse, you should be willing to defend them. Falling back on identity politics just shows you're lazy. Yeah, Tim Walz also said he would do a nuclear first strike on Iran. Like, what are we talking about? The forever wrong Matt Iglesias. At least he isn't that creature, Michael Treacer or Richard Hanania, who loves sex crimes. Oh my God, Richard Hanania. Oh, brother. Oh, brother. Matt Iglesias makes Nick Shirley look like Noam Chomsky. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So, I think this is a big deal because a lot of people will read this, a lot of people will see this, and they will retreat, as Trey Easton has as well. Look, I don't think Hassan Piker is the enemy. I just wish that he and his followers didn't treat the Democratic Party like it's their enemy, right? And then he retreats back into never Trumpers don't make concessions. Yeah, they don't have to. They're doing it right now, though, right? The Democratic Party, by force, it has to reckon with its left flank, okay? And once that happened, you and all the others who represent the interests of never Trumpers decided you had an issue with that. You didn't want to expand the tent to the fucking left. You wanted to expand the tent to the fucking right. That's why this conversation is taking place, but I'm glad that he's at least smart enough to retreat from the conversation after spending weeks and weeks talking about this shit. They tried to avoid talking about you because they know their perspectives are milquetoast bullshit and they know the risk losing their liberal audience, the rising class consciousness of building a true movement. Yes. Anyway, we have some fantastic news. Ynet Global. If Orban falls, Israel could lose its EU firewall. Hungary has repeatedly used its EU veto to block sanctions on Israel. If opposition leader Peter Magyar wins and aligns with Brussels to unlock billions of funding, Jerusalem could, lose their EU firewall. And guess what? Lo and behold,
all right, Hungary's prime minister.
Hungary. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something, okay? Let me tell you something. Lo and behold, okay? Lo and behold. Listen up. We're opening up the filters here. Okay? We're opening up the filters so you can spam. Boys, girls, and MBs. Viktor Mihaly Orban, Hungarian lawyer and politician, who has been the 56th Prime Minister of Hungary, also known as Majaristan, since 2010, has finally, after being re-elected as Prime Minister in 2014, 2018, and 2022, has lost his seat to his opposition. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and MBs. Peter Magyar will be the next leader of Majaristan. Peter Magyar, Hungarian politician and lawyer, serving as the president of the TISA party, is, after spending a good deal of time being a member of the European Parliament since 2024, will be the next leader of Hungary. Viktor Orban, more like Victor Orband. Viktor Orban, more like Victor Organ. Lost to a lawyer R.I.P. Bozo to the fascist piece of shit. Woo! A Donald Trump ally, a Benjamin Netanyahu ally, a Vladimir Putin ally, as a matter of fact, is now out. All right, so we'll talk about that, obviously. Hungary election, Prime Minister Viktor Orban concedes defeat to opposition, ending 16 years in power. Let's take a look.
Minister Viktor Orban has conceded defeat in the country's election, ending 16 years of power. He has congratulated opposition leader Peter Magyar, whose party is on track to win a two-thirds majority in parliament.
Sheesh!
Nearly half of the votes have been counted. Hungary's election committee reported a record turnout. All right, we're going to go live on this breaking news to our correspondent, Steph Vassen. She joins us now from Budapest. Steph, obviously this is a huge result for the opposition. What are you seeing? What are you hearing where you are?
What an evening here for the people here.
Low key, it turns out sometimes you can actually elect fascists out of office. And that gives me a little bit of confidence about our future as well. I mean, it shouldn't take 16 fucking years, but, you know, it turns out sometimes, you know, democracy could restore hope at the ballot box. Now, obviously, I have criticisms of, everyone's going to yell at me, but I have criticisms and concerns, let's say, about Peter Magyar as well. Okay. I do have concerns. Obviously, this doesn't mean that, you know, this doesn't mean that, you know, things are going to be very good. It's just objectively going to be better than, you know, living under the command of Orban.
In Hungary, it's all over for Viktor Orban.
Then why not voice them? Because I just started covering the story. Because the most consequential aspect of this is that Viktor Orban is gone for the time being. Can I just fucking, you know, walk through the steps of covering the story without getting backseat production notes?
After 16 years, they can barely believe it, but it's absolutely happening. It is a landslide victory for opposition leader Peter Magyar, who only worked for like 2 years to reach this unbelievable result. He has now a very comfortable two-thirds majority projected for him to win, because this is very important. A two-thirds majority in Parliament is important to change the constitution, which was so well crafted and changed by Viktor Orban in the last 16 years to get more control over the state institutions, over the democratic institutions, to control the media. So this is all that Peter Magyar can change and his party can change when he gets his seats in Parliament. And this is also very telling for populists around the world, that a populist leader who has used the propaganda machine of the state, who has silenced the media, can still be beaten. And this is something that this party and this leader, Peter Magyar, has basically managed to show. So this is also a result that will not go down well in Washington. The endorsement by US President Donald Trump didn't help Orban. The last-minute visit by J.D. Vance here to Budapest last week didn't help Orban. Netanyahu has issued his support, didn't help. The far-right leaders from Europe were all gathering here in Budapest in the last couple of weeks.
Like, this guy was the beating heart of European fascism for so many years, okay? Right populist, totally aligned, massive dick rider of Donald Trump. J.D. Vance personally tried to help him win the election. Donald Trump personally tried to help him win the election, literally said, you know, we'll reconsider our allegiance with Hungary if Viktor Orban loses. Guy constantly was going at CPAC. This is a fairly consequential defeat for international fascism, even if the candidate that won, right, Peter Magyar, is basically like a lighter version of him, and in some instances might even be more right-wing or more reactionary in terms of like immigration visas and immigration into the country. Because like Peter Magyar is also, from what I understand, I you know, looked into his background a little bit. He is known as, like, this vote for him was a vote for a lot of people looking at his background and saying, like, this is an honest guy, right? Orban, very corrupt. People see him as a very corrupt tyrant. They saw Magyar as a force that was uncorruptible. The difference, of course, also is that Magyar is not a Putin-aligned Putin-aligned candidate and was against it, even if he is also fucking super conservative, right? Yes, he was in Orban's party from 2002 to 2024. He is right-wing but pro-European Union, as opposed to Orban, who was right-wing but anti-European Union, despite obviously, getting a lot of money from the EU as well.
It all didn't help. The people here have decided something completely different. They want to be closer to Brussels, something that Viktor Orban has really managed to.
But yeah, I mean, here, like, all you need to look at, dude, all you need to look at is Viktor Orban's fucking international endorsements, okay? Every light Hitlerite on the planet currently was actively petitioning to ensure, okay? It was actively petitioning to ensure that he wins. Like, straight up. So, is a real who's who of modern day Adolf Hitlers, okay? Dave Rubin? That's funny. Dave Rubin endorsed him. And Matt Schlapp, rapist extraordinaire. Yeah, Hungary's moving from fascist adjacent right/far right populism towards having a normal right-wing government, which is honestly not great, but an improvement, I guess. Exactly. So yeah, it's not exactly a massive W for like socialism or even liberalism, if we're being fucking honest. This guy is just pro-EU, and we shall see. It's a step in the direction of Hungary gaining more sovereignty, I think, away from the international fascist movement, which Orban was absolutely a part of, right? Is a moderate W? I wouldn't even say he's a moderate. I would say that he is firmly a right-wing guy. He is a right-wing candidate.
To destroy, basically, in the last couple of years, the relationship has been very bad. He is blocking money.
Yeah, my attitude on this is that Cloud District Control is right. Is a blow to CPAC and the international consolidation of the far right movement with Orban as one of its key pillars. Yeah, Orban was this like resilient force of like right sloppyism and what is the international fascist movement. Like he was the beating heart of fascism and its growth in the European Union. So it is significant in that regard.
For Ukraine, for weapons for Ukraine. So Peter Magyar has already announced he wants to have a better relationship, to get the money back that Brussels has been blocking for Hungary, to improve the economy and to fight corruption. But it all has to be seen because Magyar, from the other hand, is coming from the Fidesz party from Orban. He was a loyalist for many, many years. So he has a lot of the same ideals and values as Viktor Orban. The only things that are really different is his relationship he wants with the European Union. So people here have voted for Peter Magyar because he was uniting the opposition in the last 2 years. People have reluctantly voted for him as well, but they had only one goal, and that was to get rid of Viktor Orban. That's how much they were exhausted by his rule and also frustrated by the limits that he put on the democratic institutions here.
Yeah, and Steph, it looks like you are, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you are waiting for the opposition leader, Peter Magyar, to speak where you are. We can see these live pictures of the crowds and what we're seeing behind you as well. But Viktor Orban has conceded this.
Everything J.D. Vance touches turns into dust, whether it be the Pope, the former Pope, whether it be Viktor Orban's multi-decade rule over Hungary, or whether it be the ceasefire negotiations that took place last night that failed, right? 23 hours or whatever, 21 hours of back and forth communication, and it amounted to nothing. So J.D. Vance strikes again. Just truly the Grim Reaper truly the fucking Grim Reaper. He just, everywhere he goes, bad luck follows, okay?
Election has he
The Queen, I don't think did he also touch the Queen? I thought that was Liz Truss.
spoken? What exactly?
Did JD Vance also link up with the Queen before she died? Oh my God. Oh my God. I thought it was just the Pope. I think you guys are confusing Liz Truss, which is the United Kingdom's JD Vance. I thought he just killed the Pope.
Has he said?
He has conceded, and he has conceded very early on, you would say. But he was speaking, and he said that he accepts the result. He congratulates Peter Magyar. He says he will go and support the opposition. It's not clear, of course, if he will have a role in the opposition himself, but he says we are not done, the fight is not over. So it shows basically that he is willing to accept the result. And all the talk that there was happening in the last couple of days, that there could be protests, that there could be resistance from whoever's gonna lose, that there could be violence even. It seems now all gone, with Viktor Orban coming out and very clearly saying, we lost.
All right, that is Al Jazeera's Step Vassen reporting amidst the historic scenes in Budapest. 16 years of rule from Viktor Orban is coming to an end tonight. Step, thank you. Well, a court in France is set to deliver a verdict on Monday in a landmark case. French cement firm Lafarge is accused of financing.
Woo! I mean, that's it's pretty solid. It's pretty fucking solid. What would be Magyar's American politician comparison? Ironically enough, maybe a JD Vance or a Marco Rubio, probably, as opposed to like Trump. If Viktor Orban is the Trump equivalent, Marco Rubio would probably be like, no, it wouldn't be Mitt Romney. You're out of your fucking mind. No, it would not be Mitt Romney at all. Mitt Romney is a woke libtard. The difference between, this is what I'm trying to explain to you. The difference between Magyar and Orban is not as like vast as you think it is. I think that's like maybe a Mike Pence. Where should JD visit next? Visits the Pope. Pope dies. Leads Iran negotiations. Talks collapse. Flies to Hungary to prop up Orban. Orban loses in a landslide. Man's got a streak. One of the most repulsive individuals, dude. Is fucking awesome. Now, of course, listen, like, obviously, European leaders are going to love this shit. I just held a meeting with Peter Magyar to congratulate him on his victory in Hungary. France salutes the victory of democratic participation of the Hungarian people's attachment to the values of the European Union and for Hungary and Europe. Together, let us advance a more sovereign Europe for the security of our continent, our competitiveness, and our democracy. So that's the key thing here, is that Peter Magyar, in spite of being almost as right-wing as Viktor Orban, not as right-wing, not as fascist, right? Not as overtly fascist, was a vote for a candidate that was against corruption, and a vote for a candidate that was going to be pro-European Union and like leaning into the EU rather than leaning into Trump and also Vladimir Putin. The Hungarian opposition was cool for doing the thing where you run Mitt Romney against Trump. I'd honestly respect them more if they just do that than if they run Kamala or Newsom in 2028. I don't think it's a Mitt Romney comparison. Like, is this threat to democracy shit actually real, or is it not? Because if it was real, you wouldn't be constantly trying to square the circle between fighting back against it and also dragging your dumbass gloves over the finish line. Lula understood this when he made his former right-wing opponent his Veep in 2022. I think this is a terrible take. We should not be doing that. But it is funny to have a guy whose name is John America. That is, because that's what his name, like Peter Magyar is like having a candidate whose name is John America. Magyar is the OG way to refer to Hungary. It's Majaristan. Peter Hungarian. Yeah, Mehmet Türkiye. Looks like the last bastion is gone. The Hungarians are about to learn the true meaning of you don't know what you got till it's gone. Again, the rest of us in Europe have just lost our only real stronghold against the EU. Devastating. In the battle between like the moderate social fascism demonstrated by the European Union versus the outright fascism demonstrated by the MAGA movement, championed by Viktor Orban, yes, it's better in comparison, but it's also entirely dependent on where the European Union goes. Are they trying to genuinely develop autonomy from the United States of America? Are they going to create solidarity and develop sovereignty for themselves? Are they going to work to decouple from Western imperialism and its forces championed by the United States of America? Or are they simply going to business as usual politics again? We don't know. There have been some statements that offer a little bit of hope that there is maybe some sovereignty at play here. But I still am not 100% confident. Times of Israel reporting that there is little expectation of Major to make any actual moves against Israel, and that at most he will just be anti-Netanyahu while still supporting Israel in the dealings in the European Union. Yeah, post-Orban Hungary would not expose Israel to more EU pain, though support may ebb. Yair Lapid congratulates him. Israeli leader of the opposition, Yair Lapid, the son of Hungarian Holocaust survivor, congratulates Magyar Pete in Hungarian. Yeah, so this is part of the reason why I say, like, I wouldn't be as confident with a new calculation against Israel, which is a necessity, which is absolutely a necessity if the European Union were to genuinely develop autonomy from the United States. Okay, it's sitting right there. Easiest fucking way to slide away from American control and to truly develop dignity and sovereignty for European Union states. Okay? Yeah, this is basically replacing the illiberal right with the liberal right, which is an improvement, but no sea change. So we shall see. We shall see. Hey, Big, can we get some coverage on the warehouse fires? Maybe, if I have time. Do you think the neo-lib leadership asswipes will dare go for it? I don't know. EU Parliament left president affirming what you're saying. The Orban era turns in Hungary with relief and record turnout. This is a heavy defeat for Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella's ally, who had gone there to support him. But let's be clear, Peter Magyar is not a clean break from the Orban era. More mindful, we hope, of respect for the rule of law. He will lead a policy firmly anchored on the right. He was a member of Orban's cabinet and shares some of his positions with him, particularly on LGBT issues. For instance, he refused to oppose Orban's ban on pride in Budapest or on migration issues. Now remains the task of rebuilding democracy in Hungary and a fighting left to definitively avert that fate. It is up to us to help rebuild a left-wing alternative that will win tomorrow without betraying the day after. If this trend continues, LFI has a chance of friends. I don't think this is as positive of an indication for the true left candidates. If anything, it's a positive indication for social democratic candidates, center-left candidates. I don't think you guys understand how firmly committed like Europeans are to liberalism. It is a totally different demon. I mean, they have parliamentary systems, obviously, and therefore there is an expression of true left. But the same battles that we are having to deal with here in the United States of America within the Democratic Party's coalition, who do they respond to? How much they lean into like true leftist economic populism? That the only country that has been able to fight that battle and win has been the rise of the Greens in the UK. Okay? That's it. In most other European countries, they are actively trying to design a center-left movement that will be robust, and Pedro Sanchez is absolutely an example of this. See, many of you don't see it. See? A lot of you don't see it. You literally immediately say, well, what about Spain? No, Spain is exactly what I'm talking about. Spain is not aligned with LFI. LFI is the true left party in France. Spain is aligned with the Socialist Party in France, which is the center-left party, okay? A center-left party that calls itself socialist, but is like maybe at best like modest, socially democratic, okay? That is the reality. There are a lot more resilient social democratic forces that are center-left, if you want to call it that, are liberal parties that are doing everything they can to align with one another all across the European Union and to create a resilient base of support to like channel all of the potential leftist momentum into their parties as the only viable opposition to the center-right forces and far-right forces that have dominated Europe for the past decade. The Greens are a joke, Hassan. In the UK, the modern Greens, they're not a joke. They're a force to be reckoned with. What are you talking about? They're currently destroying the neoliberal right-wing Labour Party in the UK. You never covered the Green victory in Kent? Yes, I did. So Spain's LFI equivalent is Podemos. The founder of that party was on your Cuba flotilla, Pablo Iglesias. Yes, I'm familiar. You are so slow. Wait, what? Why? The other party stepped down from the election to let TISA do the system change. I really hope the next election cycle will leave us better with better options. The leftists have voted for TISA just so we can say goodbye to Fidesz and Orban and welcome democracy back into our country. It's good, though. It's good to see Orban suffer. This is absolutely a major blow to European fascism, straight up. It's true. I mean, it's a devastating blow for European fascism. Even if it's the more moderate version of that is now going to be in charge. I think given their pro-EU stance, they will liberalize. They will absolutely liberalize Hungary once again, which does create an opportunity for a true left to take advantage of the momentum, especially because the right-wing forces, if Peter Magyar is just like a more moderate, more tempered approach to Viktor Orban, then the anxieties and the resentment will remain. This presents an opportunity for the Hungarian left to show a true alternative, because it was just not happening under Viktor Orban at all, right? Very illiberal rulership. What is this? I'm a member of a literal socialist party, but okay, brother, keep what? What is this? What did you say that this person said? This is a crazy thing to say. You didn't even say anything. Is this true? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much. I don't know how much change will happen. I don't know how little change will happen. Podemos has almost disappeared in Spain. There's a movement called Sumar that was a coalition of left parties. Right now, there's another movement to create another coalition for the next year election. Fidesz, with multiple pedophilic scandals, tried to expose Magyar for having consensual sex with his adult girlfriend. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that. That was a very funny thing. So, from what I understand, Peter Magyar and like the reason why he's seen as like an anti-corruption force was because his wife, literally his former wife, his ex-wife, was a part of the administration that actually, when they came into power, there was a pedophilia scandal, and his ex-wife was a part of the forces in the administration that actually pardoned a notorious pedophile as the justice minister. Okay, and Magyar broke up with her and was like, "This is fucking bullshit." Okay, and that was a major reason why he's seen as like an honest guy. To my understanding, Magyar is seen as an honest because of how he did not defend his ex-wife during that scandal and came out strongly against it. Yeah, so that was a big deal. This also showed that he was like, not willing to cut, secret side deals, right? Which was which was of huge interest to the Hungarian population, the Hungarian voters. And then there was a FSB operation where they literally filmed him having consensual sex with his adult girlfriend, and they were threatening to leak it, right? I might be mixing up exactly what took place here, but I'm pretty sure there was like because Viktor Orban is like Putin's guy, there was an operation to like leak his sex tape, okay? But two things are really funny about this. One, it was adult consensual sex. That's number one. And two, the dude is kind of hot. So it didn't really work. Like Viktor Orban is a disgusting creature, both with what he believes and the way he looks. Whereas Peter Major is like kind of a good-looking dude in comparison, especially in comparison to Viktor Orban. So like it backfired a little bit. Yeah, probably kind of hot video too. Just divorced his wife. You know he's bringing his A game if he can. Yeah. So it just didn't fucking work. It didn't work at all. Yeah, conservatives were mad that he was having consensual sex as opposed to what they're used to, which is unconsensual sex or sex with minors who can't consent, right? So that's why they were like, "Oh, this will get him." How dare he? How dare he have non-predatory adult consensual sex? That's unheard of. And yes, he has officially secured supermajority. With over 84% of the votes counted, Peter Major and his center-right conservative Tisha party have already far exceeded expectations, securing 138 of 199 total seats in the Hungarian parliament, providing them a supermajority over Prime Minister Viktor Orban and his Christian nationalist far-right Fidesz KDNP party alliance. Okay? So it's a good thing. It's a good shift. It's a shift in the positive direction, right? And it's not necessarily bad. Here are some right-wingers in America coping with that decision. One of Major's main criticisms of Orban is that he let in too many migrants that will slash legal immigration, especially foreign work visas. Major is not the liberal that some Americans are fantasizing. Yeah, he also handled it by pretty much saying, "Yeah, I fuck Lamau." So there's that too. Yeah, I saw this. This is awesome. The bars. Here is the monstrous creature, Viktor Orban, who weirdly looks and sounds like Gru conceding.
Nektek van is ennek látszatja, hiszen 2,5 millió szavazót sikerült összegyűjteni.
More of this, please, by the way. More of J.D. Vance appearing alongside far-right figures, trying to offer support to the international far-right fascist coalition. Please, we want more of this. I welcome it. I love it personally. I hope we get more of that. J.D. Vance, are you free in October? 2026 Israeli legislative election. The fucking kiss of death. The touch of death. Now, this is what Donald Trump did, by the way. Not only did President Trump repeatedly tout his endorsement of Viktor Orban's re-election bid and post the message below, Vice President J.D. Vance went to Hungary this past week to campaign for him. And it fucking failed because America's approvals around the globe, even in previous allied and previously aligned fascist countries, has cratered. Okay? Abso-fucking-lutely cratered. This is literally what happened in Canada. This is certainly going to play a role in upcoming elections in Europe as well. Americans trying to intervene in the elections of foreign countries, with the exception of Israel, is always going to be a burden. It will always backfire. I hope they keep that shit up. I say, J.D. Vance, please keep that shit up. My administration stands ready to use the full economic might of the United States to strengthen Hungary's economy as we have done for our great allies in the past. If Prime Minister Viktor Orban, like he was just trying to bribe. He was trying to fucking meddle in the elections openly and like bribe Hungary and Hungarians if they vote for Viktor Orban again. Would Trump endorsement work in Turkey? No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't think a Trump and JD Vance endorsement work. Turks hate Americans and America. This is an example of ideology trumping, no pun intended, national interests. Orban's Hungary is more allied with Russia and China than it is with U.S. Atlantis' interests. And the Trump admin still went fully behind him, just slop for the fascism tro. Yeah, that's true. The other side of the story is that what a lot of people don't realize is like Bukele in El Salvador and also Viktor Orban's Hungary were very aligned with China as well. They got tremendous Chinese investment. A lot of people talk about like how El Salvador has developed. And they're, oftentimes far right figures. They're like, oh, Bukele is like, behaving in the way that we want him to. He's a fascist. He's a fascist. And it is true, except all of the development in El Salvador is Chinese backed. And something similar was happening with Viktor Orban in Hungary as well. It's this very weird, like China doesn't give a shit, right? China does not care. If given the opportunity, Peter Major is like, oh, we should continue these investments in the country. I know for a fact that China would be perfectly fine with that, right? We know now what we need to beat Trump, an attractive young dude whose name is America. Maybe also could change his name or something. This was the day of the Canadian election. By the way, Pierre had to tell Trump to stop. President Trump, stay out of our election. The only people who will decide the future of Canada are Canadians at the ballot box. Canada will always be proud, sovereign, and independent, and we will never be the 51st state. Today, Canadians can vote for change so we can strengthen our country. Yeah, that was really funny. It was too late, though. Too little, too late. Oh, this was such a sad, but such a funny little moment. JD Vance tries to call Trump at a Viktor Orban rally and gets sent the voicemail.
Had a special guest that asked that I give him a phone call, and we'll see.
Sunyi Niufi, thank you for the 20 community gift to subs.
Let's hope he actually answers. So this is going to be very
Oh,
embarrassing.
God, I hope he picks up.
All right.
I'm sorry, the person you were trying to reach has a voicemail box that has not been set up yet.
Okay. Try one more time.
Bro's on DND. Bro's on DND. He got no contact.
I get a good signal here. It's ringing. It's progress. I actually had a special guest that asked that I give him a phone.
God, he is such a fucking charisma suck, dude. God, he's so bad. He's so fucking bad. The Hungarian TV media is very state controlled. The elections are extremely gerrymandered for the rules, and Orban's used corruption to control state institutions. But it's an electoral authoritarian regime. The opposition can win is just unduly very hard, similar to Turkey, for the record. Drop side on Orban's loss. Viktor Orban, Hungary's authoritarian prime minister and one of Donald Trump's most loyal global allies, conceded defeat Sunday after 16 years in power. As opposition leader Peter Major's center-right Tisha party took a commanding lead. With over half of precincts counted, Tisha stood at 52% to Orban's Fidesz at 38%. Orban called the result painful but clear. Turnout was the highest in Hungary's post-communist history, with nearly 78% of eligible voters casting ballots. Major is a former Fidesz insider who broke with Orban in 2024 over a government corruption scandal. He ran on a platform of Christian conservative politics, but without what he calls Fidesz's corruption, promising to restore EU ties, unfreeze billions of European Union funds, and bring Hungary back to Western institutional norms. On Israel, the Major government would likely mark a shift from Orban, who Netanyahu's called a rock. Major is expected to reverse Hungary's withdrawal from the ICC, which issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu before it becomes permanent on June 2nd. Hungary has been the sole EU member blocking sanctions on violent West Bank settlers. Major may lift that veto. Orban repeatedly blocked EU joint statements condemning Israeli strikes, forcing the bloc's foreign policy chief to issue them in her name alone. That firewall would likely end. Major is expected to distance himself from Netanyahu personally while maintaining ties with Israel more broadly. So there's that element too. The worst people you know are crying today. Oh, hell yeah. RIP Hungary, you're about to be conquered by Muslims. Oh, hell yeah. I already covered the EU member from the left who released her statements on this victory and what it means for the broad left coalition in the European Union. she was very sober about her assessment of the situation. She said, "It's not, this is not the major W that you think it is," and she's right. Anyway, now on that note, we have a lot to talk about. I obviously also have the Pod Johns combo
About, like, who you
that
are,
I
what
had,
you're-
where I basically, for like, I would say the bulk of our conversation, explain my position on Israel versus Hamas. I think it's a very good conversation that took place with the Pod Johns as well. I think you guys will appreciate it, especially considering that a lot of the liberals that watch Pod Save America, once again, have reacted in the exact same way that they reacted every single time I've been on the Pod Johns, which is excitement. They reacted with excitement, frustration for the way the Democrats speak right now on issues, right? I don't know what CNN is talking about. This guy seems pretty all right. We do need people to be more aware of who he actually is, trying to take what little we actually have away. It's not the LGBT or Latinos or black people or Muslims, it's the rich. Significant improvement over Cory Booker. Exactly the kind of conversation we need. Honestly, this was a very good interview. Much better and much more coherent than I expected, given the way some media is talking about Hassan. Appreciated the substantive focus on the issues instead just the controversy. After listening to Hassan for an hour speak clear and concise reasoning, now I understand why the AIPAC wing of the Democratic Party, which is say 99% of the party, fear and attack him. Logic and reason are not on the side of the Zionists. I've been casually aware of Hassan Piker and heard about some of his controversial comments. This is the first time I've listened to a more in-depth interview with him and entered it with an open mind. The perspectives Hassan offered helped me to expand my understanding of the issues between Israel and Palestine. It's true, people are finally doing their homework. I learned about Hassan from Sarah Longwell at The Bulwark, and within 1 hour after listening to her rant about him, I became a Piker enthusiast. Thanks, Sarah. Hassan is spot on regarding corporate greed. I wasn't sure who Hassan Piker was until Dem started attacking him. After I listened to Kyle Kalinske talk about him, I checked him out and I found that I agree with almost everything he says. Thanks, Dems, for putting him on my radar. John was exactly the right person for this interview with Hassan. Good push, but also civil conversation and letting him explain while still calling out dumb things. This is what democratic politics should look like. Hassan's conviction is so compelling. He's so good whenever he's allowed to expand on his opinions. I love how he stands by his words and doesn't back down. I'm a 64-year-old Democratic woman. I listen to Hassan. I'm so fed up with my own party. If they want to get rid of him, they want to get rid of more of us than they can imagine. I'm 70-year-old moderate Democrat. I found Hassan about a year ago. Do I agree with everything he says or the way he says it? No, I don't. He said things that make me angry. So has every Dem commentator or left-leaning politician I've ever supported. All of them. But the man is out there fighting for what he thinks is right. He's honest about what he feels and experiences. He puts himself out there. He goes and talks to everyone. He's not our enemy. He is our ally. This is, as Hasanabi Productions says, is why they're desperate to try and cancel me. When regular people watch him outside of 20-second clips, this is what happens. Always, okay? Always. And of course, on the orbit, people who actually watch the interview go, wow, this is fucking awesome. I had no idea what this guy was about. And now that I've actually listened to him without this ridiculous filter, even in a somewhat contentious environment where, you know, my statements are being called in to account, right? There is a little bit of accountability there. It's not like John Favreau is just like letting me run away with whatever I'm saying and doing. All of a sudden, it's a lot more fucking reasonable. Okay? These guys are not equipped to deal with subversive mask-on radicals and have done more to sane-wash this lunatic views than probably any other alternative media platform. Ezra Klein argues that we don't have to limit discourse to people we deem acceptable, then does somersaults trying to make Hassan Piker seem more acceptable. As much as he's a never Trumper, he's also a never Democrat too. Piker's a loser. His ideas are losers. So is his politics. Notice how the people that refuse to engage me and the ideals that I represent and fight for are the ones who are the most active in disparaging what this movement is, what this movement represents. Many of them can also be identified with Israel first politics as well. Interesting. Or in this sex pest case, obviously a personal vendetta that he's carried for almost a fucking decade. All right? I promise you, Pod Save America, we do not need to hear from this R word When will you have Kyle on the show? Media, Hassan Piker Brands Republican Party biggest terrorist group on earth. Oh, this is awesome. This post was fact checked by Real American Patriots. True. It's true. It's objectively true. Once again, I've been saying that for fucking years. Good luck. Good luck trying to deal with that. I stand on that in a similar way, in a matter not dissimilar to the way I feel. I think we should all just pay less attention to him, not the president, the other one. Maybe we lived out a little too hard. Let's go back to talking about getting Liz Cheney for a round 2 on the campaign trail. What is this? Your wiki is currently getting more views than Rogan's. Since March 24th, Hassan the Hun's Wikipedia page has seen more daily traffic than Joe Rogan's every single day. Oh, nice. Oh, hell yeah. Let's go. Zionists acting like it's not about Israel. Shannon Watts did the same thing too. To pretend the debate to push Piker to the fringes over Israel is not only wrong, it's irresponsible. Anti-Semitism aside, Piker has a long list of indefensible anti-American racist misogynistic offenses. Unsure why so many Dems are eager to defend such a bad guy. We all know what the real reason is, and we all know the real reason is Israel, because you have openly, as a part of Third Way, pushed Democrats to literally align with right-wing forces who actually do demonstrate, maybe not anti-American, but racist and misogynistic offenses. The problem is, once again, in the old era, in the old age of the media, if I was some college activist, or if I was just like some guy with no platform whatsoever, then yes, most things that you heard about me would be from the gatekeepers. Right? You would just hear what Dana Bash had to say about me. You'd just hear about Jake Tapper. You would just hear what Mark Levin had to say about me. And that's the only information that you would be able to make up your mind on, right? Like you would be like, this is the only thing I know about this guy. He seems terrible. In the new media environment, it doesn't work that way. I sometimes have either a competitive or sometimes a larger audience than these guys do, right? So people can hear from me directly. So it doesn't fucking work that way. That's kind of what Ezra Klein was talking about. The through line in the freakouts over Rogan and Piker is snobbery and nostalgia. The GOP has already embraced new media, but many liberals still want manor mavens, legacy media gatekeepers who went to Yale and tell them what is acceptable to discuss. Yeah, that's it. Why does ContraPoints hate you so much? Is it just because you called out her bad Israel take she had? I'm not a fan of her, but she hates you for real. Yeah, she's just leaned into being a total defender of the Democratic Party, has like some right-wing points on that as well. And I don't know why, she just has like such a strong affinity towards the nation state of Israel. Could be, some unchecked Islamophobia potentially. But yeah, she became Hasbara points. She was quiet for the longest time on the issue of Israel and then chose to speak out somewhat in favor of Israel and very critical of the pro-Palestinian wing of the party. Literally, I think it was 2 days before there was this massive sea change because there was tremendous amounts of coverage about Israel doing a famine in Gaza. Like, it was unbelievable. 2 years in, she didn't speak about Israel at all. No peep. Her fans were constantly demanding she say something. Then she went out to Reddit, which is the most, at the time, the most pro-Israel platform that she could find, and released this massive statement. The statement itself was flawed. I guess that's the, best, that's the nicest thing I can say about it. Right? The statement itself was flawed, and it basically put the blame on the pro-Palestinian activists and the advocates and the people that were dominated, people who were arrested for advancing this cause, for speaking truth to power, punished relentlessly for it, right? She basically said, oh, you're showing these atrocities. It's like, and it's, making people feel bad. And it also hurt the Democratic Party's chances of winning. It was this ridiculous statement. And the timing of it was so fucking bad. The timing of it was so bad. Like, if she had just kept quiet, she probably would not have received so much backlash. But not only did she, come out with this ridiculous statement, she did it right before there was like unlimited coverage on Israel doing a famine and murdering Palestinian children in a way that was impossible to ignore. So I think, content creators like this, I myself am not, outside of this group either. Nobody likes to be yelled at. Nobody likes to be told that they're fucking wrong, right? And she was inundated with unlimited statements about how fucking wrong she was and how much of a genocidaire she was. And that probably hardened her position. And she, for some weird reason, decided that I was like the primary critic of her statement, I think. Yeah, it is also because of this as well, I think, maybe. I don't know. Like her being her doing something with Hillary Rodham Clinton. She thinks you're a community harasser, not understanding that you share similar audiences. Yeah, it's almost like an Ethan Klein moment, right? It's an Ethan Klein thing where it's like, oh, it can't be my own statements being reflected on by my own community that I've cultivated, many of which are anti-Zionist, and on the side of truth and justice here, on the side of the Palestinians, getting mad at me. It must be some outsider that's pushing them to criticize me. Not comparing Natalie to Ethan, please. It's true, though. They're aligned on this. They're aligned on this fucking issue. I say this as someone who's collaborated with her, who's hung out with her, who was shocked by her position on the issue of Israel to begin with. Like, I was pretty open about it. And my commentary on her statement was much nicer, much nicer than many others. My expectation was that she would be the last person to do this because she's actually smart. Like, it was genuinely a surprise. Because Ethan Klein is a fucking idiot, Like, he doesn't know shit about politics. He's just responding to whatever he sees on his timeline, whatever is presented to him in his subreddit, oftentimes by sex pestiny Redditors that LARP as though they are H3H3 fans, right? She thinks you're a RevCom, so I don't think she knows that much. Wait, what? You just gave him material for his next 6 hour podcast, buddy? Okay, whatever. I don't give a shit. What's he gonna do? Fucking complain about? Is he gonna cancel Ezra Klein now? King Lib. He's gonna be like, Ezra Klein, you're canceled. You're the king of anti-Semite. You got sucked into Hassan's dangerous web of lies, like he did with fucking Sam Cedar. Ezra Klein, another Jew hater. We must cancel our New York Times subscriptions, guys. Like, is that what he's going to do? Okay. Good luck. What is this? Hen Mazik? Here's his talking points. It's a comforting notion that if we just allow people to spread lies and hate about our brothers and sisters in Israel, they'll hate Jews in the diaspora a little less. But the reality is hate, yes, including that hate that calls for the dissolution of the world's one Jewish state and the home of half a Jews living, has little to do with our actions. Read my take on Ezra Klein's latest op-ed on Hassan Piker on my Substack. It's so funny to read this article or to read this sentiment as anything but if you give equality to all that live in the land that Israel currently occupies and dominates, you want another Holocaust to happen. Okay? It's an unbelievably racist thing to say. And most people don't even comprehend how unbelievably racist it is. We just take it for fucking granted. This is the same exact principle that whites in South Africa presented, where they were like, what, we can't have a fucking white ethno state? What are you talking about? A white-dominated ethno state? You just want us to die, huh? Like, little old Rhodesia, standing alone in the entire continent of Africa, can't even have it, It's so fucking stupid. So many black countries. Why can't there be a white one in the continent of Africa? You know? The photo he's using, yeah, he's trying to say that, like, Ezra Klein wants to fuck me. It's insane. Libs are going crazy. We need to register every IDF soldier in the United States. We cannot allow people who put sniper bullets in the heads of children in Gaza to roam freely. God damn. Ben Dixon, let's go. Hell yeah. They are sleeper cells for all sorts of terrorism. My goat. The vice president landed in D.C. at 4:31 p.m. after a 56-hour Pakistan journey. Vance made phone calls from Air Force 2 on the trip, including to Israel's ambassador to the United States, a U.S. official told me. Yeah. Let's get to it. Okay, we'll talk about the final offer America presented. We'll talk about the failures. Last night, right around the time when I went offline, Vice President J.D. Vance, after a 21-hour back and forth negotiation process in Islamabad, Pakistan, came out on a podium and delivered his remarks, stating that the ceasefire negotiations, or at least the first attempt of ceasefire negotiations, had failed. Behind him were Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Both of them were smiling. Do with that information what you will. 21 hours. And they were fucking smiling.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Cheesing.
And let me say a couple of notes of appreciation. First of all, to the Prime Minister of Pakistan and to Field Marshal Munir, who were both incredible hosts. And whatever shortcomings in the negotiation, it wasn't because of the Pakistanis, who did an amazing job. And
yeah, except, let's be real, Pakistan! You tried to be Turkey! You tried to be the table! And you failed. Turkey would have been the table. And Turkey would have brought diplomacy to the table. Pakistan is not the table. Turkey is. One table.
Really tried to help us and the Iranians bridge the gap and get to a deal. We have been at it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement. And I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on.
These motherfuckers are cheesing in the back, bro. They're like, yeah, we fucked it. Why? Why, oh, why could they feel so confident, feel so elated? After 21 hours of high-stakes negotiations, why were they so stoked? I wonder why. By the way, my assessment on the situation is Donald Trump, knowing full well that the negotiations were going to fail, sent J.D. Vance because he wants to fuck J.D. Vance. Marco Rubio, on the other hand, is straight up a demon. What was Marco Rubio doing, knowing full well that these fucking negotiations were going to fail? Hanging that shit around J.D. Vance's neck? He was hanging out with Donald Trump at the UFC. That's right. Because those are the two primary figures, right? You got the J.D. Vance and you got the Marco Rubio. Those are the 2028 contenders who will carry the torch of Donald Trump and MAGA. Okay? So what they do in this moment matters. A lot of people have speculated, and I also kind of believe this, I'm leaning into this as well, that J.D. Vance was the one who leaked over and over again to the media that J.D. Vance was the one who leaked over and over again to the media that he was very much opposed to continuing war with Iran. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Well, you do that because you know this war is unpopular and it will be reflected on very poorly, especially depending on which way it goes. So you're positioning yourself as the anti-war candidate for 2028. Yeah, I said, what the fuck is this country, man? Here's Donald Trump talking to the fighter. Trump flirts with a UFC fighter as peace negotiations with Iran fail. That's what happened last night.
And we've made that as clear as we possibly could. And they have chosen not to accept our terms. Questions?
Sir, Nick Roberts CNN. Precisely what have they rejected here? Can you help us understand it a little bit?
Well, I won't go into all the details because I don't want to negotiate in public after we've negotiated for 21 hours in private. But the simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations. Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon, not just now, not just 2 years from now, but for the long term? We haven't seen that yet. We hope that we will. Jen. We talked about all those issues, Jen, and we talked about a number of issues beyond that. And so certainly those things came up. But again, we just could not get to a situation where the Iranians were willing to accept our terms. I think that we were quite flexible. We were quite accommodating. The president told us, you need to come here in good faith and make your best effort to get a deal. We did that, and unfortunately, we weren't able to make any headway. Preston.
Mr. Vice President, how often did you communicate with President Trump throughout the negotiations? There were reports that there were multiple rounds where there were breaks in between negotiations. How often did you communicate with the president throughout those rounds, and what was he saying as you were going through these negotiations that you said fell short?
Yeah, obviously we were talking to the president consistently. I don't know how many times we talked to him, a half dozen times, a dozen times over the past 21 hours. We obviously also talked to Admiral Cooper, to Pete, to Marco, to the entire national security team. We talked to Scott Bessent a number of times. So look, we were constantly in communication with the team because we were negotiating in good faith. And we leave here with a very simple proposal, a method of understanding that is our final and best offer. We'll see if the Iranians accept it. Thank you.
Did they give you any indication of this?
Yeah, we know what about the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. blockade the ship. U.S. to blockade ships entering or exiting Iranian ports. Okay. America has decided they're going to add a secondary blockade to the Iranian one, which is fucking nutty. Yeah, there it is from Chinese social media. Iran toll, U.S. toll. Okay. Yeah. Break an enemy blockade by blockading their blockade. Don Zhu. You can't get outsmarted if you don't think. Never let him know your next move. And the best possible way to never let your enemy know your next move is if you personally don't know your own next move. Okay? That's the Don Zhu method. That's JD Pondon, baby. All right. We'll get into the long, what is it, a QR code on the door? What the fuck is this? All right, anyway. Here.
America's vice president left here with no breakthrough to show for his efforts after marathon talks.
Fucking loser, but this is, oh God, he's such a fucking loser. It's awesome.
Lasting almost 24 hours, he appeared early morning looking deflated and calling it a day.
The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
It was, he said, the nuclear issue where things came unstuck.
We need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations.
The news from Islamabad prompted a furious reaction back in Washington and a threat from President Trump to escalate this war yet further, with the US naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which is already shut by Iran. It raises the spectre of markets plunging where they open tomorrow and clashes at sea. Talks here were historic and serious, the highest level face-to-face US negotiations with Iran since its revolution in the 70s. The Iranians were sounding more conciliatory than the Americans, saying some progress had been made.
On some issues, we actually reached mutual understanding, but there was a gap over 2 or 3 important issues, and ultimately the talks didn't result in an agreement.
Pakistani mediators say the diplomacy is not over yet.
We hope that the two sides continue with the positive spirit to achieve durable peace and prosperity for the entire region and beyond. It is imperative that the parties continue to uphold their commitment to ceasefire.
There's now a frantic effort by many other nations to help put the diplomacy back on track. There is so much at stake. A resumption in hostilities is now more than possible, but for the Americans, the challenge is that the use of force has failed to solve the Iran problem, its nuclear issue, and its control now, the Strait of Hormuz, in 6 weeks of war. So why should it now? Talks here may have foundered, but clearly made some progress. There is a chance of building on that, but not if the US is embarking on yet more escalation, this time at sea. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Islamabad.
I love this shit.
Good to have you.
Ooh, it's so loud. Okay, I love this shit, okay? Why do I love this shit? Because what's the main reason why Iran's toll system is a major burden from an American perspective? Obviously, number one, it shows that Iran actually has a full military dominance over this choke point, the strategic choke point that's very important for 20% of all the world's energy supply to flow through, right? Impeding on that in any way, shape, or form, or exercising control over that directly contradicts why America is supposed to be the hegemon, right? That's one. But the other reason is because that strategic choke point being controlled by Iran and stopping most of the tankers that would normally transit through freely is destroying the global energy markets and is going to lead to unprecedented shortages and also inflation. As I've said already, oil and gas is a global commodity that everyone needs, and there is inelastic demand. So therefore, if one place doesn't have oil, then it impacts the global market prices across the board. So for Donald Trump to turn around and decide, oh, you're doing a blockade? Well, guess what? We're doing a blockade on top of your blockade is only going to make the crisis worse. Because if Iran is saying, oh, we'll let all the ships go through as long as they pay us a toll, and then America turns around and says, nah, we're fucking blocking them, it's incredible. It is unbelievably stupid. It's an unbelievably stupid thing for him to do. It's hilarious as well. It's a very funny move. A very dumb move, but also a very funny move. Respect to Donald Trump. Really. Indeed, Trump's Hormuz play is a classic jiu-jitsu move. If the strait gets blocked, America will be the one doing the blocking, not the RGC. Oh, God, these guys are so fucking stupid. They're so stupid. Look at the conservatives. The blockade always made more sense than seizing Karg Island. It stops Iran's exports, its revenues, is a counterpoint to their closing of the straits. They may attack Gulf oil facilities, but it puts greater pressure on Iran, also puts great pressure on China to pressure Iran. Conservatives last week, Trump is doing an amazing job opening the Strait of Hormuz. Conservatives this week, Trump is doing an amazing job blockading the Strait of Hormuz. Amazing. Okay? Fucking amazing. Trump announcing that he's going to beat Iran at his own game by blocking the Hormuz even harder.
May Allah awaken the people and help them to see the evil doings of Israel and the United States.
Who could forget the classic jiu-jitsu move? When your opponent is beating your ass, you start punching yourself in the face instead, and you go, ha ha, I wanted my ass beat to begin with, sir. That's what this is. Classic jiu-jitsu move, okay? That's what happens when you're engaging in hand-to-hand combat and you're doing jiu-jitsu, okay? And your opponent is choking you, so you go, well, I'm holding my breath. I'm holding my breath myself. Ha ha. 12D chess. Never let him know your next move, baby. Ah, you didn't choke me. I choked myself. Joke's on you. I think he's joining the other team. That's JD Pondom, baby. Put some respect on his name. Put some respect on it. Okay? You can't fire me. I quit. That's always the last desperate attempt by Donald Trump. Whenever things are going south, he goes, ha, I fucked it myself. Okay? Joke's on you. I wanted the situation to be worse. Now, obviously, there are some negative consequences here, right? And there will be some limitations to what Trump can and can't do. We shall see if he actually follows through on this, because almost the entirety of Iranian tankers are being shipped to China. So will Donald Trump take a stance against Chinese flag tankers that are delivering oil and gas to China? Remember, even before the last 42 days, I believe it was 80% of all Iranian oil and gas that was directly going to China, right? Iranian oil is not a major part of Chinese oil. Now that percentage has obviously increased since no ships are transiting through the strait as it stands currently. But most of Iranian oil was going to China anyway. So is he going to start duking it out with China? Because that feels kind of dumb, especially right now when America is at its weakest point globally, both with its soft power utterly destroyed by Donald Trump, weirdly enough, but also its hard power capabilities have taken a significant hit by a country that is much smaller than China, by a country that is much less powerful than China. Okay? China is a nuclear country, a country with nuclear arms. China is the manufacturing engine of the entire planet. You can't really do what you have failed to do to Iran to a country like China. You can't do it. China could with much ease, punish America and maybe even punish the rest of the fucking globe if they wanted to, right? Without even the threat of nukes, obviously. So, regarding Trump's threat/decision, Tritaparsi says, why does it say Tritaparsi search? Anyway, to impose a naval blockade on Iran, color me a skeptic. Taking more oil off the market, particularly the only oil that is now getting out of the Persian Gulf, will drive oil prices further up. And the paper price of oil will get closer to the actual price, which should be around $150 per barrel. So that literally, again, you can't do that. The whole reason why you wanted to open the Strait of Hormuz was because of what's going on in the oil markets. Okay, so that's incredible move by JD Pandon. Brilliant, sir. He is truly the real revolutionary, the real green energy champion that this world needed. Okay, many of you don't understand. He doesn't think in decades. He thinks in generations. He thinks in centuries. The Trumpian mind cannot be comprehended. Okay, he is Mr. Eco-terrorism. It turns out some of y'all have only watched movies about how to blow up a pipeline. Trump is quite literally doing that, okay? So who's the real woker now, bitch? Donald Trump is forcibly creating an environment for that renewable energy transition for every country. Respect. Put some fucking respect on his name. He is the GOAT, okay? Don Zoo. So, a dramatic increase in inflation in the U.S. will ensue. Avoiding this is precisely why Trump was stuck in a position where he had no escalatory options out of this conflict before the ceasefire. He still doesn't. Stopping tankers carrying Iranian oil wouldn't just be an escalation vis-a-vis Iran, but also against the countries that are buying Iranian oil, which includes China, India, and other Asian countries. I doubt Trump is ready for that escalation, particularly given the upcoming summit in Beijing. This is true. This is also true for punishing countries that have negotiated a toll with Iran for the Straits. That includes Pakistan, which hosted the negotiations. That's probably secondary. I don't think America gives a fuck about, Pakistanis being mad at them. Sorry. No disrespect. I know I come across a little jealous because Pakistan was the table, okay, as opposed to Turkey, which is the normal position, right? But that's not, I'm just being serious about it. I think America is very selfish and also doesn't care about, Pakistan's interests at all. Number 4, the naval blockade escalation will make the closing of the Red Sea more likely by the Houthis. That would take another 12% of global oil flow off the market. We would now be looking at oil at around $200 per barrel. There are 9 or so days left of the ceasefire. Since neither side has explicitly stated talks won't resume or that the ceasefire is dead and over with, all these moves should be treated as tactics and threats within negotiations. It wouldn't be surprising if these threats are walked back soon, perhaps before markets open on Monday and a new round is announced. However, there is time for brinksmanship and there is time for serious negotiations. Galibaf also had a fucking line on this too, but we'll get to that in a second. If the U.S. truly was insisting on zero enrichment in Islamabad, which was not Trump's red line at first, but rather Israel's, then the next talks will be rendered a failure, just as the talks in May 2025 were killed by Trump shifting to the Israeli red line. Still, I don't think that necessarily will lead to a return to war. A more likely scenario is a new non-negotiated status quo in which Tehran retains control over the Straits but doesn't get any sanctions relief while the U.S. pulls out of the war, and the question becomes whether Israel will continue the war on its own. This is a likely scenario. Okay? Which, of course, in the interim, will allow Iran to gear up with the latest and greatest Chinese technology as well, from manpads to, anti-air defense systems and the like, and therefore will present a much more competent force that is capable of defending its own territory from aerial bombardment campaigns that Israel could conduct without American help. Not really sure how much Israel will be able to defend itself. Don't really see that happening, even though Israel is crazy like that. Okay? China is not sending any air defense to Iran. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I know that the Bloomberg report is questionable, but we'll see about that. You never know. You never know. Esfandiar, this guy's really good. The only explanation I can come up with for Trump's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is that he desperately wants the U.S. to be cut in on the future toll revenue. A few things to consider. By definition, a blockade does not reopen the strait. Iran had already blockaded itself by closing the strait to most vessels in the first place. The oil exports Iran was sustaining do not create significant revenues because of U.S. sanctions. If revenues were the issue, Trump would have canceled General License U ahead of the April 16th deadline and issued new sanctions targeting Iran's Chinese customers. Arguably, the blockade announcement puts more pressure on the Gulf states than it does on Iran. No Gulf country had called for a blockade, and I suspect the announcement came as a complete surprise. The terms that Trump will insist upon to end his blockade and the terms that Iran will insist upon to reopen the strait may be similar. Now, two countries are trying to demonstrate their control over the strait, leaving the GCC and Iraq in a compromised position. Here is... the chairman of the Israeli Parliament National Security Committee and a member of Netanyahu's coalition. Well, I guess he deleted his statement, so we don't know. But I think his the attitude from the Israeli side is, dude, enough yapping. Come on, ceasefire over. Let's go fucking bomb Iran, right? That's what the statement was that he deleted hastily. But I can totally see that being the overarching sentiment in the Israeli Knesset. Right? Because they did not want the ceasefire to take place. They tried to spoil it by doing a heinous act of terror against Lebanon, killing 300 Lebanese civilians in a matter of 10 minutes. And then they never really stopped, right? They never really stopped with their ambition. America was like, yo, keep it cool, keep it chill. Yeah, this guy, chairman of the Knesset National Security Committee, Zvika Fohel, mocks Trump. Donald, if you have to shoot, shoot. Don't quack. And then post a duck. Trump called in to Bartiromo on Fox. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, also, the speaker of the Islamic Republic of Iran's parliament, Galibaf, who was at the meetings, said, enjoy the current pump figures with the so-called blockade. Soon you will be nostalgic for $4 to $5 gas. Gas station near the White House. God damn, dude. Again, they're farting on us, okay? Straight up, they're farting on us.
The more
100%. We're going meat for meat, ban for ban on the meme side, and they got a whole lot more meat than we do, okay? Their meat goes a long way in comparison to our meat. They got all the Kubide. We got none. It's crazy. They got the Lego music videos. But it's not alone. It's not enough. They got the fucking, the Iranian ministries, the Iranian embassies all around the world farting on us. And then you got Galibaf himself hiring some fucking Zoomers, deciding to go meat for meat.
I think the two biggest issues are the Strait of Hormuz and the nuclear. The Strait of Hormuz is the more time urgent issue because every day that goes by is disastrous for the international economy and for the region. The nuclear issue can be parked for a while, not because it's not important, but unless there's evidence that Iran is changing the status of nuclear materials or its program, then nothing changes. So I would say Strait of Hormuz is the big issue. What we cannot allow is for Iran to exercise sole control over the strait, charging tolls where it derives all the revenues, because that would also eliminate any economic pressure on the Iranian regime. What I've argued is we ought to adopt the principle that the Strait of Hormuz needs to be open for all or closed to all, including Iran. And what I've recommended with two of my colleagues, Neil Ferguson and Phil Zelikow, is that we create a new Strait of Hormuz commission or authority that would essentially govern the operation of the strait. Perhaps you could have a fee charge, but then it would be distributed, not just to Iran, but to the other, half dozen or so local countries. Might be some degree of enforcement or support from the countries in Europe and Asia that are most dependent on the passage through the strait. I would bring China into the equation because it has influence, obviously, in Iran. But we need some type of a governing authority that dilutes Iran's ability to decide who gets to use the strait. And if we can't get that, David, I would favor a blockade. Again, open for all or closed to all.
This is so unbelievably stupid. Richard Haass, former head of the Council on Foreign Relations, says Washington is not negotiating from strength and that Iran has emerged from the war with greater leverage. On Hormuz, he suggests Washington should tell Iran the Strait of Hormuz can be open to all or closed to all, propose the International Governing Commission, including Iran and Gulf states. This is what Trump tried to do. Remember when Donald Trump was like tweeting or truthing, maybe we will control the Strait of Hormuz with Iran, right? Which, for the record, was already a massive L, okay? Because, like, the idea that you are going to beg Iran to cut you in on the toll collection implies that you've already given up, that Iran is controlling the Strait of Hormuz, okay? That statement was unbelievable from Trump. When he said that, that was an admission of defeat, and I covered it as such. Then they presented that as the alternative, and the Iranians, to their credit, recognizing the unbelievable leverage they have currently, said, fuck off. At least that's what it seems like, right? They straight up were like, no, actually, you're not getting a fucking piece of the toll collection. No, we're controlling the strait. We'll open it to all, but we will continue collecting fees. The problem here is they already do control the Strait of Hormuz. You either reopen it militarily or you reopen it through the process of diplomacy. And if America is not going to, talk the talk, then they have to walk the fucking walk. This kind of bullshit about, we're adding a separate blockade on top of the pre-existing Iranian toll, it's not going to work. Not only are you actually positioning your naval assets, for the record, closer to Iranian missiles, right? Because there's that element as well. Like now you're what? You're repositioning your naval assets within striking distance of Iran? Okay, good luck. That's number one. And number two, what are you going to do? Fight against China? It's an unbelievably stupid fucking move. And last but not least, you don't get to actually enforce any control over the actual Iranian choke point. And on top of that, oil prices fucking skyrocket, which was the reason why you wanted to reopen the Strait of Hormuz anyway. Yeah, just 2 days ago, Trump said the Iranians were begging to make a deal and that Iran had no military capabilities left. Yet Iran is choosing not to make a deal and explicitly choosing to go back to war. Not really the move of someone desperate and without military. What this shows me is America wants a deal. Iran is fine with continuing the war, and Israel definitely doesn't want a deal. So if America wants a deal and Israel doesn't want a deal, and you don't get a fucking deal, what does that tell you? That Israel is straight up controlling the entire conversation here on the American side. That's it. That's it. It is undeniable that we are placing Israel's idiotic goals ahead of our own, ahead of the rest of the world's interests. Do you think the rest of the world gives a fuck if Iran collects a toll? Probably not. I mean, I'm sure they don't like it. $2 million in additional funds given directly to Iran. But it is the most manageable way out of this. Instead of trying to get America to pay reparations, you get the entire world to pay reparations to Iran for America's fucking spectacular quagmire. Headline in the IRGC-affiliated Fars news agency, Trump joins Team Iran. I've legitimately never heard of a more insane, designed to backfire policy under this administration maybe ever. Not only attempting to blockade Iranian ships, but any ships that goes to the Strait of Hormuz by paying the toll. I do not foresee this. He said that it starts, CENTCOM says tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern is when the blockade starts. I think Trump goes back on this right before market open, maybe. Like, I just can't see this. I just do not see how this continues. I can't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Trump is that guy because he is fucking nutty. But all signs point to him, pulling out of that. This genuinely feels, you're wrong, think like a stupid. I mean, I am thinking like a stupid. I'm trying to think like a stupid, but this is just like, there's levels to this stupid shit, okay? There's levels to this stupid shit. Him saying he's going to do this blockade is already stupid shit. Him actually enforcing the blockade, well, that's stupid beyond comprehension. Like, that is a new level of stupid that has been unlocked. Iran speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf responds to Trump, if you fight, we fight. And if you come with reason, we will deal with reason. We will not succumb to any threat. Let them test our will once again so we can give them an even greater lesson. Once again, I feel like these guys don't understand that the people that they're talking to there, Ghalibaf and the legal counsel representative and Arakshi, are the ones that want to fucking negotiate. Most of the people who actually control the levers of power in Iran currently are not those people, okay? They want to keep going. They, understandably, don't feel as though they've dealt a significant enough blow to both Israel and the global markets. They want to keep blowing shit up, okay? You got the 25-year-old Hormuzers sitting around in this mosaic system in a fucking bunker for the past 40 days, lobbing Shahed drones nonstop, thinking, all right, give me the fucking go ahead. I'm going to hit that button again. Okay? Clearly, they're like, I'm going to Hormuz. I'm going to fucking Hormuz. I will die if I don't Hormuz right now. Okay? That's it. They are clearly invested in continuing until there is sufficient military deterrence that has been established. Iran and Thailand, the Thailand embassy says, the new move from Trump against our country is so comical that we don't even have a meme for it. So Trump is helping Iran now? Yes. All right. Let's get back to, the U.S. foreign policy establishment supports Trump collapsing the global economy. Strategic defeat has made the U.S. ruling classes insane. They'll drag us down with them rather than have their beloved empire take the L. Okay, Trump is now a vessel for the foreign policy blob that he ran against. Dennis Ross, former negotiator, says the blockade always made more sense than seizing Karg Island. It stops Iran's exports. Like, they literally went from Trump is going to reopen the blockade, reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He's going to do it with our military might. We got our hardest dicked Marines coming in. Okay, how are we going to do this? I don't know. Maybe we'll take Karg Island. Maybe we'll take other islands. How will we do that? I don't know. It doesn't matter. We'll do it somehow, okay? Their dicks are hard. They're ready to go. They're locked and loaded. They've been eating the best crayons that are readily available, not available to regular commercial consumers. These crayons that these hard dick Marines are eating are basically Blue True crayons, okay? Their dicks are hard. Their weapons are locked and loaded. They're ready to fucking rape and pillage. Okay? Except that hasn't happened because it's virtually impossible to pull through on an operation like that without suffering significant casualties. Okay? Tremendous casualties. So much so that even Donald Trump is not, pushing for it. He's saying that he wants to do this, but he's clearly hasn't, done it, right? And instead, this is the new meta. Oh, you put a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz? Well, guess what? I'm going to put a blockade on your blockade. Leaning into the fucking, leaning into the offense to begin with, leaning into the damage that the blockade is doing to the global energy markets and only worsening that crisis in our own hands. I'm going to piss off every single motherfucker. I'm going to make the Gulf scream. I am going to make it so that the Gulf never deals with the United States of America again. Okay? I'm going to make it so that all of the Asian countries that we have developed security cooperative agreements with suffer energy grid collapses, and they will lean into China, and they will also never work with the United States of America again, absolutely gutting the security umbrella and the defensive perimeter that we've created around China. We're going to render that into nothing, okay? We're going to turn it into dust. I'm going to do that shit because I'm fucking crazy. That's what Don Zhu is doing. That's what JD Pondon is doing. Respect JD Pondon, okay? He is a Maoist third worldist. We got 30 minutes of oil markets open, by the way. Who knows how they will react to this? But we got the Maria Bartiromo thing. All right, let's hear what Richard Haas has to say, okay? Why do your mods so harsh? They block for nothing burger. You do have serious issue. How does that dick taste in your mouth? My mods are champions. Okay, calm down. All right. On Hormuz, he suggests that Washington tell Iran the Strait of Hormuz can be open to all, closed or all. He came up with this brilliant idea. Trump leaned into it. Crucially, Haas says if Iran refuses, the U.S. should consider blockading the Hormuz at the Gulf of Oman to stop Iranian oil exports. His view, Washington should not accept Iran's sole control over Hormuz, but also cannot realistically exclude Iran from the strait. Haas says the war has made a return to pre-war status quo impossible, and the U.S. has lost the war in a strategic and political sense. Separately, he calls on Trump to pressure Israel to stop what he describes as a discretionary war in Lebanon. Knock it off, he suggests Trump tell Netanyahu. Trump, of course, is only listening to the first part of this conversation and deciding to lean into that, and not the second part of the conversation that requires him to literally tell Israel to knock it off.
Most dependent on the passage through the strait. I would bring China into the equation because it has influence, obviously, in Iran. But we need some type of a governing authority that dilutes Iran's ability to decide who gets to use the strait. And if we can't get that, David, I would favor a blockade. Again, open for all or closed to all. Brilliant. Including Iran, and a blockade option in the Gulf of Oman.
Even if you get to a governing authority that we all agree to, it sounds like Iran's going to have a say. They're going to have a seat at the table.
100%.
It's not clear they had that before. Is that really a step backward? Because it used to be an international waterway.
You're right. And there's no return, though, to the status quo ante. I think Iran has discovered that it has more leverage than it ever quite realized before. I don't think we can walk this back. So we're going to have to bring them in. So yeah, we're going to end up here and elsewhere, probably worse off than we were 5-6 weeks ago. What we want to do, though, is limit the scale of that. And I think, again, probably the wisest course here is not to do something to Iran, but to do something with Iran, to give Iran a stake in an open Strait of Hormuz. And I think we have a chance to achieve that, but probably only if we have the pressure.
What are the chances that Trump has some pedophile shit on him and that's the reason why he's like doing whatever Israel wants? Is a question that if you were to ask me like, I don't know, like a year ago, 2 years ago, I'd be like, dude, come on. It's fucking bullshit, right? I'm not gonna lie. At this point, it is so unsustainable and so transparently idiotic what Trump is doing at the behest of Israel, like so clearly that I'm no longer gonna fucking sit here and act like that's not a concern, okay? I don't know what the fuck is going on. This goes far beyond boomer philosemitism, far beyond like loyalty, ideological loyalty to Zionism. It is it's obviously completely outside of the realm of like American foreign policy and its interests, like converging or diverging with Israel's. Paired up with the whole like Melania statement, it does kind of feel like Israel is just, teasing a little bit, maybe. I don't know. I can't. It is truly, truly insane what Trump is doing right now. It doesn't make any sense. Like, what Trump should be doing right now is a strategic retreat away from the region, lean into whatever Iran's demands are, right? And then saying, look, we fucked up. Like, we definitely fucked up. We took an L. It's fine. We're going to gracefully exit this area and we're going to double down on our ambitions in our own backyard, right? Like that kind of thing, the Don Road doctrine. Like, look how easy it was with Venezuela. Cause this is like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. This is so crazy. This is so much worse than Vietnam. Like, as far as like how big of a defeat this is, how public of a defeat this is, what kind of impact this has had globally, because Vietnam was in Vietnam, right? And Cambodia, Laos, but overall it was like over there, it didn't have this kind of major impact on the rest of the globe. Okay? This is such a different and way more public defeat than I don't think many Americans fathom. Like, I think a lot of Americans are just sleepwalking through this process, as they always do. They're totally fucking oblivious to exactly what has taken place in the last 40 plus days. You obviously in this community have seen it. You've heard my commentary on it. You have experienced it in real time. But most Americans, like if you talk to your coworkers, I feel like they probably don't fully grasp how bad things are. Okay. Yeah, I don't think Americans understand how much of a crisis this is around the world. They're crying about gas prices. Meanwhile, the rest of the world has like 1 to 2 months max. Yeah, I think Americans look at this and go, oh man, we're taking a big fat L at the gas pumps, right? Taking a big fat L at the gas pumps. This sucks. But at the end of the day, we're fighting terrorists or whatever, right? Like, I think the average American's assessment is like, I don't know, they're fucking brown people. They're scary. They say death to America. Trump is fucking them up. And maybe we're not like, maybe we haven't achieved our like victory condition, but like my gas prices are bad. I don't want him to do this. And now I'm increasingly believing that, he's doing this just for Benjamin Netanyahu, just for Israel. I think that's like the median voter's attitude on this issue. What is actually taking place, however, is a spectacular blow to what has made America the global hegemon, right? Without the American Navy, without free commerce and free trade taking place on all seas across the board, guaranteed by the American naval assets, America's hegemonic status is called into question. That's number one. Number two, petrodollar is taking a major hit here, which has played a formative role in when tied with the naval assets and forcibly opening all the seas, is the reason why the dollar is the global reserve currency, which has given America tremendous benefits, right? We can dominate our enemies when we see fit. We can design tremendous sanctions and cripple entire markets, cripple entire countries like we've done so to Iran, many others. All of that goes away. When all of that goes away, what does America have? It's just a fucking belligerent country with a bunch of nukes, with 800 military bases that look a lot like 800 separate military incursions. Okay? This is something that I have talked about quite a bit when America was deciding to move away from soft power and going only in the direction of hard power. But I never thought that it would be this bad. I didn't realize that like defense contractor bloat and American power projection, force projection capabilities would be this diminished in comparison to a country that we've been able to destroy economically, right? I don't think Americans understand what that world looks like. I don't think they recognize that. I don't even think most Americans understand that we're losing and getting our ass beat in the Strait of Hormuz by a country that we've designed as an enemy for no fucking reason, right? We're in it. We don't recognize it. Most people don't. It will get so much worse. Telling you right now, it's going to get so much fucking worse. You'd say pedo stuff coming out would actually have an effect on Trump's image at this point. Isn't there enough mentioned in the files to infer shady things generally? Would that actual blatant evidence have enough power? Yes. I mean, these are lizard-brained cultists. Like, I'm sure it would put a dent. I'm sure that it would put a dent in the confidence that people have in Trump, right? Like, it depends on what the pedo stuff is, right? I mean, it wouldn't significantly deteriorate his base of support. Unless it's gay, maybe, and with Bill Clinton. Like I said before, if it's something that like his fans can perceive themselves of doing as well, if it's like a 14-year-old or whatever, they could probably justify it because they'd be like, oh, I'm kind of weird around my daughter's friends too, like that attitude. But if it's like, if it's like babies or if it's like, him sucking Bill Clinton's dick or something, then it's over because no Republican can foresee themselves or can put themselves in the shoes of Donald Trump doing something like that, right? Yeah, Megyn Kelly-ass mindset. They already did that. Megyn Kelly literally defended Trump potentially predating on like 14-year-olds, the 16-year-olds. Like it's gross. It's disgusting. These people are monsters. But I'm just telling you what they're. I'm telling you what they could deal with and justify, and what they couldn't justify. Anyway, in intensive talks at the highest level in 47 years, Iran engaged with the U.S. in good faith to end war. But when just inches away from Islamabad MOU, we encountered maximalism, shifting goalposts, and blockade. Zero lessons learned. Goodwill begets goodwill. Enmity begets enmity. It's Goat Talk with Sayed Abbas Araghchi, Foreign Minister of Iran. The war is not about... Dylan Saba says, yes, it would be rational for the U.S. to make the necessary concessions for a deal now and totally foolish to continue the war. But that was also the case on February 27th when the available deal was more favorable to the U.S. than as it is now, where the key issue is... because then and now, the key issue is ballistic missiles in Israel. Ballistic missiles with strike capabilities of hitting Israel, okay? That's been the number one thing that Israel wants to destroy, right? It's ridiculous, and no country would say yes to that, by the way, and Iran certainly saw that as a non-starter. The war is not about nukes or enrichment. It's about Iran's force projection and Israel's project of regional hegemony. What would need to change is not U.S. assessment of possible military outcomes, but U.S. willingness to disregard Israel. So far, we have no evidence of that. Yes, straight up. I've been saying this since day one as well. I agree with this analysis. Until the United States of America says fuck off to Israel, we're not going to find a reasonable conclusion here. So it's more so about how much pressure will America withstand from the global energy crisis that it has created. How much pressure will the American government withstand from capital owners that are definitely calling him and freaking the fuck out, because they're experiencing asset loss. Sometimes Amazon warehouses, Amazon facilities are being blown up. Data centers are being blown up in the Gulf. And also, obviously, the inflation the inflation and the loss of energy transit that will significantly deteriorate manufacturing for goods and parts that are necessary for American producers all around the world. Because remember, all that is going to China and Vietnam, India. These are the manufacturing countries, and the manufacturing countries are getting most of their oil from the Strait. So when they can't get necessary resources, then all of a sudden they can't manufacture the goods and the components necessary for global manufacturing, right? Like, people are not factoring this into the equation at all for some strange reason when having this conversation, when Trump tries to make it seem like this is a fucking you problem, right? He'll be like, oh, well, we got all of our oil. We got all of our needs met. All right, bitch, but you don't make shit. You don't make anything. What do you think happens? What do you think happens when, sure, you got your oil needs met, you got your gas needs met, but you don't have any of the fucking components necessary for American production, necessary for the goods that are coming into the United States of America? What happens when there are shortages? It's not true. It's not even true. We get like 20% from there. Yeah, I mean, we also still get, yes, it's a global commodity, and it all obviously impacts. Even though we're an exporter, we still get some oil from the Strait, if I'm not mistaken. But it doesn't matter. That's like, you can make up for that with overproduction, okay? You can even make, in the short term, more money for American oil refineries that will now kick into high gear the thick Venezuelan crude, thick crude from Venezuela, right? And that's probably what's happening right now. Donald Trump has talked about it, as a matter of fact. Oh, all these empty oil tankers are transiting. They're coming to the United States of America. Now we're going to be the sole oil exporter. What did I explain to you, though? What did I tell you? Yes, America has light from fracking, but now it has thick crude from Venezuela. But listen, what I told you was, we do not have the refinement capacity, even with the Venezuelan thick crude coming to U.S. refineries. We currently, as it stands, do not have the refinement capacity to keep up with 20% of the entire oil supply coming from the Strait. Okay? We don't have it. And we will not have it. There is no way that we will be able to make up for the loss that the rest of the world has incurred. A loss that they don't even need to experience. A loss that we brought about to the global energy markets. Okay? Yeah, it's the fertilizers, helium for MRI machines, etc. It's not just about the oil. There's no replacing those things from other parts around the world. That too, yes. And not only that, but also the way that the oil and gas industry operates is they're not going to fucking turn around and sell at anything less than market price. So Americans will experience inflation. Trump, we are mobilizing our ships, and we have a huge fleet that we're moving to the Strait of Hormuz. The blockade will be similar to what we did to Venezuela, but at a higher level. I want everything. They have no cards. Farr says Trump joined Team Iran. The U.S. president, by threatening a military blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, dashed analysts' last hope for a drop in oil prices. Senator Mark Warner, I don't understand how blockading the Strait is somehow going to push the Iranians into opening it. I don't see the connection here. IRGC Navy Command says any misstep by the enemy in the Strait of Hormuz will place them within a zone of mortal danger. Remember, that threat is also very real. They are coming into striking distance as well. So in order to implement a blockade, they have to be in striking distance of Iranian ballistic munitions and Iranian drones, right? So I don't even know how they are going to do this without having their naval assets get bombed and experience laundry fires. American destroyers will start having laundry fires over and over again. You know, it wasn't enough that we lost so many aerial assets, so many fixed position radars. Now we got the Navy to contend with. Now we're going to lose fucking naval assets too. Fuck it, you know? Laundry fires, question mark? Well, it's a joke, chatter. I'm saying that it is, that's like what happened to USS Gerald Ford, or at least that's what they claimed. All right. So yeah, U.S. Central Command announced Sunday it will begin a blockade of all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports at 10 a.m. Eastern time on April 13th, following the collapse of peace talks in Islamabad. CENTCOM said it will not impede freedom of navigation for ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz to and from non-Iranian ports. The The blockade will be enforced against vessels of all nations calling at Iranian ports on the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, which means any ship that actually transits through the strait, because currently they have to pay a toll to Iran, will be blocked by America. Okay? The other thing that he's also talking about is blocking Chinese tankers. Iranian oil tankers that are transiting through the Strait of Hormuz unimpeded and sending tankers of oil to China. The announcement comes hours after Vice President J.D. Vance left Islamabad without a deal after 21 hours of negotiations. It's unbelievably stupid. Okay? But that's who Donald Trump is. He's an unbelievably stupid guy. So let's take a look. Now that we looked at Richard Haas's analysis as well, let's look at two different things. One, Danny Citrinowicz of Atlantic Council. He's critical of this deal, critical of this move. He says there are no easy fixes on the Iran problem. Efforts to curtail Iran's oil exports would almost certainly trigger a sharp response from Tehran, most notably attempts to disrupt or shut down traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Such a move would send global oil prices soaring with immediate and far-reaching consequences for the international economy. A naval blockade, often discussed as an alternative, is no silver bullet. It will require U.S. forces to operate in close proximity to Iran's coastline, significantly increasing their exposure to risk. Iran's geographic scale and military capabilities mean that sustaining such an operation would demand substantial and prolonged allocation of American resources. More importantly, there is little reason to believe that blockade would force Iranian capitulation. If anything, Iran's demonstrated resilience thus far suggests the opposite, that it would absorb the pressure and respond, potentially through kinetic means, in order to reassert deterrence. You're literally putting more targets in striking distance that have the American flag on them. Iran would love that opportunity. That's precisely the reason why the IRGC has kept saying, come closer, please try to transit some oil tankers through the strait. I promise, we'll let the tanker go through. We just won't let your destroyer go through. So that's what Donald Trump is seemingly invested in doing. It doesn't make any sense at all. The likely outcome then is not a decisive breakthrough. Economic pressure on Iran would intensify, but so too would the strain on global markets and regional stability, particularly given the centrality of the Gulf to global energy flows, which raises an unavoidable question. If this approach were truly decisive, why wasn't it pursued earlier? Which is the absolute best question to ask here, because it wasn't a good idea. Because Trump, it seems, didn't put a lot of thought into this at all. And because he's run out of fucking options, he probably heard Richard Haas say it and was like, oh, well, this seems smart. Oh, fuck it. Why not? Well, now let's hear what Donald Trump had to say to Maria Bartiromo on Fox News this Sunday.
Well, we're going to be blockading. It'll take a little while, but it'll be effective pretty soon.
Oh, the full Maria Bartiromo interview is the next? Okay, let's watch this first, and then we'll get to Maria Bartiromo then.
Begin with some breaking news. The U.S. President Donald Trump has just posted on Truth Social warning Iran.
Got him.
It read, Iran promised to open the Strait of Hormuz, and they knowingly failed to do so. This caused anxiety, dislocation, and pain to many people and countries throughout the world. They say they put mines in the water, even though all of their navy and most of their mine droppers have been completely blown up. They may have done so, but what ship owner would want to take the chance? There is great dishonor and permanent harm to the reputation of Iran and what's left of their leaders. But we are beyond all of that. As they promised, they better begin the process of getting this caps lock international waterway open and fast. Every law in the book is being violated by them. I have been fully debriefed by Vice President J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner on the meeting that took place in Islamabad through the kind and very competent leadership of Field Marshal Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan. They are very extraordinary men and continuously thank me for saving 30 to 50 million lives in what would have been a horrendous war with India. I always appreciate hearing that. The amount of humanity spoken of is incomprehensible. The meeting with Iran began early in the morning and lasted throughout the night, close to 20 hours. I could go into great detail and talk about much that has been gotten, but there is only one thing that matters. Iran is unwilling to give up its nuclear ambitions. In many ways, the points that were agreed to are better than us continuing our military operations to conclusion. But all of those points don't matter compared to allowing nuclear power to be in the hands of such volatile, difficult, unpredictable people. My three representatives, as all of this time went by, became, not surprisingly, very friendly and respectful of Iran's representatives, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, Abbas Araghchi and Ali Bagheri. But that doesn't matter because they were very unyielding as to the single most important issue. And as I have always said right from the beginning, and many years ago, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon.
By the way, all of the conversations about the nuclear stuff is good. The reason why I say that is because, like, it's the one area where Iran actually made concessions on numerous occasions, both the JCPOA and certainly with the last negotiation that ended up with, Donald Trump attacking Iran. So the more Trump signals that that's a big red line, the better things are for reaching a manageable conclusion in this ceasefire. Okay? Because it makes me feel like that is being presented as like the big deal, right? So that there's a little bit of theater associated with it, so that it kind of feels like America fought the good fight and we're able to get the the major concession. It's not the major concession at all. Obviously, the major concession would be opening the fucking Strait of Hormuz and no longer allowing Iran to control it. But that's not going to happen because Iran controls it militarily. So the idea that like the nukes are the real problem here is I think a way for Trump to hint at what he is trying to, what he is positioning as a solid W to the American public. Now, of course, given the current conditions, this will be infinitely worse than the JCPOA from the American position. I don't personally care that it gives some much needed economic respite to Iran. I think that's a good thing. We have been starving this country for decades for no fucking reason. Holy shit, you are so annoying. Shut the fuck up. Does it make you feel bad? What stake do you have in this? If you're an American citizen, are you an American citizen? Because if the answer is yes, like, what stake do you have in this that like Donald Trump decided to go blow up Iran at the behest of Israel, at the behest of Netanyahu? And now the only thing that you're experiencing is just an increase in prices and potentially an inflation, potentially a crisis of inflation regardless. So like you didn't get anything out of this process at all. And also on top of that, the only thing that many of these fucking losers lean into, which is America's force projection capabilities, is diminished. It's gone. It's deteriorated, if not completely destroyed. It doesn't make any sense that these guys will just be like, oh, I'm so fucking mad at you for explaining to me exactly what's happening right now.
Donald J. Trump. Well, we are live in Tehran and Islamabad, where we start with our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett. Kimberly, I was reading that for the first time. You may have been hearing that for the first time. We know that obviously Trump was dialed in multiple times during the talks in Islamabad, but what do you make of this very, very long Truth Social post promising that the Strait of Hormuz needs to be open, that the international waterway must be opened soon and fast in caps lock, and obviously reiterating the American stance that Iran must give up its nuclear ambitions? Where do we go from here?
Well, we go to what I think is the second part of Donald Trump's very lengthy and long tweet. And correct me if I'm wrong, Neve, because I'm reading this in real time just like you, but it seemed to me there were two posts in quick succession. And the second post, or the first, I'm not sure which order it came in, but I believe the second might be even more consequential than the first about the strait being open, because it starts out, so there you have it. The meeting went well. Most points were agreed to, but the only point that mattered, nuclear, was not. Leaders are dead, he goes on to say near the end of it, in Iran, but he says Iran will not be allowed to profit off the illegal act of extortion. What he means is the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. They want money, and more importantly, they want nuclear. Additionally, and at an appropriate moment, this is key, we are fully locked and loaded, and our military will finish up the little that is left of Iran. These are the words I think are most consequential, because the U.S. president said very, very firmly before these talks, he said that if a no deal is reached, the military was loading up.
There's something very funny about being like, Iran, how dare you extort the world? Only we get to do that, which is why we're doing that now. Okay? It's so funny. How dare you? How dare you think you can extort? This is extortion. Offering a toll off of your coastline that is a geographic choke point is extortion, which is why we will be doing that thousands of miles away from our shoreline, you know? An issue that we actually created. Once again, it's important to recognize that the Strait of Hormuz was open for business before Donald Trump decided to blow up Iran.
And would be ready to go. And so the U.S. president now has reiterated that. So this is the big fear that everyone had, is that this would just be a pause in fighting. But the U.S. president has indicated that he is ready to resume at a time and place of his choosing. So it's obviously going to be concerning, because this is going to have ramifications that go far beyond Islamabad. The fact that the U.S. president has reiterated his threat and says he is now going to carry out and finish the job of Epic Fury, the joint operation between the United States and Israel on Iran, that was started and only temporarily paused for the talks that occurred here and have resulted in no deal in Islamabad.
Kimberly, just give us a sense of the sentiment there in the wake of these high-level talks in Islamabad. Is there any perception whatsoever that there are avenues for further discussion, or is, at least when it comes to negotiations as they stand right now, have the shutters come down?
Until Donald Trump sent that post, there definitely was still the air of hope in the atmosphere here in Islamabad. Look at behind me here, or off to the side, I'm not exactly sure where in the frame the Serena Hotel is, but something historic occurred. Groups of people that have never sat face to face in decades, not since 1979, achieved that for the first time. That is being seen beyond Donald Trump as a major world diplomatic breakthrough. And we also know that there was rapport for the first time. We also know that there were teams that hung around after J.D. Vance boarded Air Force Two, along with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, to leave Islamabad. Those people were talking at the much lower level. And the hope
Indian media is blaming Pakistan for the peace talks failing. Oh, that's so funny.
This would continue.
Oh, that's
there would
amazing.
Be some sort of shuttle-type diplomacy between the intermediary, Pakistan, and that there would at least be able to, on the technical level, be discussions that would continue. But it's a real question now about whether or not that still stands, given the president's statements that have just come out. The U.S. president, again, making very clear, and this is something that's going to disrupt the oil markets and certainly cause energy to spike, is that he says that the one thing that mattered to the United States was making sure that Iran could never build a nuclear weapon. That was not achieved. So by all accounts, the U.S. president is saying this was a failure, even though everyone else saw the breakthrough in the discussion being a success. The U.S. president has drawn a new line saying that the U.S. military is locked and loaded and will finish up the little that is left of Iran. The threat can't be any more clear than that. And I expect that we're going to start to see the rippling ramifications, whether it's in the oil markets, whether it's in fear of escalation, is going to quickly ensue as a result of this post that really has spiked any sort of sense of hope that existed here up until moments ago.
Kimberly, we'll get the view now from Ali Hashim in Tehran on this. Ali, look, we are trying to put into context the latest Truth Social post from Donald Trump. You may have heard some of it from Kimberly Halkett there in Islamabad. It boils down to this. Trump says the US is ready to finish up Iran at a, quote, appropriate moment. We are fully locked and loaded. This, of course, off the back of a perception that the talks in Islamabad have failed. Give us a sense of what overarching message at least the Iranian negotiators are carrying back from Islamabad to their home country.
Well, the Iranian negotiators went to Islamabad saying and indicating clearly that there is a pillar of mistrust holding this tent of negotiations. And for them, what happened yesterday overnight for around 21 hours was the last possible attempt to reach a deal with the United States, though, as I told you, they went with a lot of mistrust, and the street here also holds a lot of mistrust. Now, given the fact President Trump's reaction, this is going to have its own implication also on the Iranians, because they took into consideration this is a ceasefire, this is not the end of war, and they've said this. And in the past, actually, they said they're not going for a ceasefire, they will go for an end of war, but this didn't happen. So now they're still controlling the strait. They are repeating day after day, hour after hour, that they're not opening the strait as far as the conditions they put for that aren't met. One of them is the issue of Lebanon and the ceasefire in Lebanon.
8 minutes, and it's up 9%. Try to find a difference between Italy's Espresso online magazine and the Nazi Der Stürmer's depiction of Jews. I was not able to see a difference. Any Holocaust museum and scholar who is silent in the face of such anti-Semitism has forgotten the main lesson. Wait, isn't that a... Did you just... I don't want to say anything wrong here, but that's a real photo. Did this guy who is an Israel defender look at a real photo of a IDF settler harassing a Palestinian woman and said, wow, anti-Semitic cartoons much? Dude, you can't... Oh my God. What was he thinking when he said this? I mean, this is the worst version I've ever encountered of the whole, like, saying Israel kills babies is a blood libel, you know? Well, that doesn't actually end up making people question what they're seeing and decide, oh yeah, well, maybe I shouldn't actually say that Israel kills babies because, oh no, it's blood libel. It might come across as offensive when I'm, seeing all the babies that Israel's killing. It just makes people reconsider whether blood libel is real or not. This unironically gives legitimacy to these heinous depictions, these heinous anti-Semitic depictions, when you pair them up with a real fucking photo. Another incredible moment where Israel's greatest defenders are leading to its global demise, its collapse of its approval ratings around the globe. Are you waiting for someone? Why are you so far right? I'm making a taco / wrap, Mediterranean wrap. Anyway, very cool stuff from...
Second is on freezing the assets. Now, I think we are outside this circle now. We are in a different circle now, dealing with a new situation, actually an old situation that's being renewed. The threat of war, the resumption of war. For Iran, this would mean back to business just like last week, and then no one knows how this is going to reach a new station or a new juncture where there's the possibility to talk once again. Before the war, the main issues were the nuclear issue and the ballistic issue. Now, especially in the latest talks that took place in Islamabad yesterday on this dome. The main issue was the Strait of Hormuz, an issue that wasn't on the table even.
Yeah, because it wasn't an issue at all. That is an indication that America has lost. America had a lot more leverage in the initial negotiations process. A lot more leverage, right? And then they chose to blow their load on whatever the fuck Israel's desires were, whatever Israel's design was. And they not only lost all their leverage, but now Iran has all the leverage and additional things that Iran now controls. Spectacular failure.
A few weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, what do we make of the fact that it wasn't even mentioned by J.D. Vance in this final news conference that he gave in Islamabad? I'm sure there would have been more questions put to him about that, but it wasn't among the first that were asked of him. I mean, just looking at this Truth Social post by Donald Trump in more detail, this promise to finish up Iran at an appropriate moment appears to be contingent upon the Strait of Hormuz waterway being open and open fast. Donald Trump's words. Where are we right now when it comes to Iran's leverage over the Strait of Hormuz, and whether or not in any way a compromise there might help stave off Trump promising to finish up Iran?
Well, actually, it's now clear that the epicenter of this whole conflict has shifted from the nuclear program to the Strait of Hormuz, because the Strait of Hormuz has more direct implication, not only on this region, but on the world. The weaponization of the strait by Iran created a kind of a global energy crisis that is just accumulating day after day and reaching the houses, each house in the United States, Europe, and the whole world. At the same time, this is having more implications on the region. Iranians seem, till the moment, capable of closing the strait, or at least creating a situation of managed passage, just according to whom they agree with and they disagree with. And we've seen this even yesterday, according to the maps and the programs that track the Marines. So for the Iranians, they know very well that this is their asset right now, and that's why they are insisting on continuing it. And as we've been saying before, the new Supreme Leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, mentioned the strait for now a couple of times in two statements. And that's not only a, official decree. This is becoming for the Islamic Republic a religious decree.
And we begin this Sunday morning with breaking news on the war in Iran. President Trump announcing moments ago a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is beginning. Coming up in moments, President Trump will join me in an exclusive interview to give us the very latest on the war on Iran, as high-level talks between the United States and Iran have concluded with no deal. It was the first direct talks between the two countries in a decade, and the highest-level talks between the two since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. The talks beginning on Saturday and lasting 21 hours in Islamabad, Pakistan. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Pakistan leading the U.S. delegation, along with Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, as a fragile ceasefire has been underway between the two sides since Tuesday, after President Trump agreed to give Iran 2 more weeks to open up the Strait of Hormuz or face further destruction. Now the president will implement a naval blockade on the strait. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance after the talks in Islamabad this morning.
We have been at it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
Joining me now live on the telephone with the very latest is the nation's 45th and 47th President of the United States, President Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, thank you so much for being with me this morning. I know that your time is limited, and we appreciate you making the time to explain all of this to our audience. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Maria.
Mr. President, can you explain to us what is going on right now with the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, we're going to be blockading. It'll take a little while, but it'll be effective pretty soon. And we had meetings yesterday. They, as you said, lasted 21 hours. That was a long meeting. We had some very, very good representatives, as you know, JD and Steve and Jared. So we were well represented, but we didn't get there on the important issue. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. I've been saying that for 30 years. I would never allow that to happen before I was in politics. And that country will not have nuclear weapons. Most countries shouldn't be allowed to have, but that country will not have nuclear weapons.
Not
So,
Israel.
Mr. President, was that the red line there? Can you explain to us what went on in these talks? What
Dude, Maria Bartiromo looks fucking insane, dog. Every time I see her, she looks more crazy.
did the United States ask of Iran, and how did they react?
Well, they reacted. You know, it was very interesting. It
Yes,
started
JD's
off
on Ozempic.
weak. They came in like they had the cards, but they don't have the cards. Their army, their whole military is obliterated. The whole place is obliterated, and as you know, levels of leaders are gone. They're literally gone. Khomeini.
I mean, this don't make sense, right? If that was the case, you wouldn't be doing a double blockade. You would reduce the number of blockades to 0, not double the number of blockades that exist in the region, right? Like, clearly, if the Iranian Navy capabilities have been significantly deteriorated, there'd be 0 blockades right now.
He's gone. The whole thing is gone. The whole place is gone. They have one thing that they can do. They can say, well, gee, we're going to put a mine someplace just a mine. We'll drop 1 mine, 2 mines, 10 mines. And that will, if you have a ship that costs $1 billion, you say, well,
Where is this? I don't know why we have to condemn Trump's threat of destroying civilian infrastructure in a civilization if Iran's whole tactic has been targeting civilian infrastructure. Can I ban Neek Skit? Literally saying attacking civilians is wrong, man. Wait, what? Who do you think between Iran and the United States of America was targeting civilian infrastructure more and first and killed a shit ton more civilians? Look at the whole convo before. No, answer my question. Who started the war? Through perfidy, which is, illegal. Who started the war after a round of negotiations where the Iranians, before this war, decided not to, before the war started, decided to basically give in to all the demands. Condemn that as well. Okay, there's nothing else to condemn then. That was horrible. Doing war crimes first doesn't justify the other ones after. That's Israel's argument as well, and it's wrong. Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you actually talking about? What the fuck is Iran supposed to do, buddy? Would you be fine if Iran blew up American military bases on the United States homeland? You know what I mean? Iran is implementing a blockade, which is perfectly reasonable for them to do so. And on top of that, they are implementing a toll system, which is not even a blockade any longer, but instead of a way for them to retrieve revenues that they've lost because America unjustifiably chose to sanction them. To say this in the eve of America also saying, instead of negotiating with Iran and allowing commerce to go through this strait, we're going to do a double blockade instead, is extra stupid. You're why us third world chatters hate your asses? I mean, that's an exceptionally stupid person. That's an exceptionally stupid person who is behaving like a baby who doesn't understand anything. Like, they're like, oh, I don't understand. Like, why is Iran not fighting and abiding by the rules that we are violating when we're attacking Iran? Unbelievably stupid statement. The fuck are they supposed to do, man? They're trying to do their very best to continue their sovereignty after they've been unjustifiably and illegally attacked by not one, but 2 countries. One of those 2 countries wants to completely destroy it. America, for far too long, has decided might makes right. Well, that was all good as long as there was no military that had the capacity to say, I bet. Iran clearly does. And they are capable of engaging in asymmetric warfare. Iran is the victim here. Iran is the wrong party here. And they have every fucking right to fight back, to maintain their sovereignty. Okay? You can't destroy the rules and violate them with regular frequency and then cry to the fucking referee when you killed the referee. We are the reason why the referee's dead. And in spite of that, Iran has been unbelievably restrained in its retaliatory strikes, only going up the escalation ladder when America goes up the escalation ladder. You should be begging. You should be on your hands and knees thanking Allah and Ali that they're not behaving in the way that Israel behaves. It's totally ridiculous. Imagine if Iran treated the Gulf states in the same way that Israel treats Iran, in the same way that Israel has treated Lebanon, in the same way that Israel has treated Gaza. All of those Gulf states that went and got American military bases, thinking that that wouldn't at any given point turn the crosshairs on them, who are now complaining that Iran is even striking back. All of those countries are a turkey shoot if necessary. If Iran wanted to behave like Israel, Iran could literally exclusively kill civilians in the Gulf states. They have not done so. Israel is still deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure. Iran has only retaliated by targeting civilian infrastructure like desalination plants after Israel or America has struck its civilian infrastructure. There is no both sides are bad when our side is the party that's doing the wrong. I cannot believe it. I can't believe that there's still people saying this shit. Sorry, just read a Guardian article where now people are saying horizontal escalation, targeting civilians as a tactic works, and I hated how this is being normalized by all sides. I got triggered, basically. Okay. Then demand to literally restrain and perhaps dissolve the current Israeli state. Because if there's one country that has wiped its fucking ass with all of those previous rules and still continues to do so, it's the United States of America and it's Israel. It's especially Israel. All right? You can't destroy the rules and violate them over and over again and then not expect similar violations to take place once you have violated those rules against a country that's willing to fight back. Totally ridiculous.
I prefer not getting whacked by a mine, losing my ship, or damaging it badly, at least. And so that's a little bit of a thing that they can do, and that it's military might and military power don't do it, but, you know, it's extortion, and they're extorting the world. You know, we don't get our oil from there. We have so much, we have, and one thing you said, and I don't know if anybody heard it well, but we have boats pouring up to the United States. They'll be filling them up, and they'll be leaving, and they're going to be packed with the best oil you can get, light, sweet crude. They're going to have the best oil that you can get. But so that's interesting, and it's great because we have a lot of oil. We don't get any. I mean, literally last year it was 1%. We did that as a favor. We don't need the strait. But other countries do. And I will tell you, while we're on the subject, we're very disappointed with NATO. We're very, very disappointed that they didn't come. Now they want to come and they want to help with the strait, and it won't take long to clean it out. So we're going to clean out the strait, and they'll be able to use the strait in not too long a distance. But we had a very intensive negotiation, and toward the end it got very friendly, and we got just about every point we needed, except for the fact that they refused to give up their nuclear ambition. And that's the only point, frankly, to me. That was the most important point by far.
And I want to ask you about that, and I will get to NATO as well. But, Mr. President, you wrote on Truth Social this morning saying that we will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. And at some point, we will reach an all being allowed to go in and all being allowed to go out basis. Right. So tell us what you're trying to accomplish with this blockade,
all in,
sir.
All out. Yep, it's called all in and all out. There'll be a time when we'll have them all come.
It's so funny. He just like directly copies shit that he sees on his timeline. I mean, I guess it's cutting out the middleman in some respects, because in the past, like, what is this? Iranian MP who attended the Islamabad talks. America was not seeking an arrangement. Yeah, we'll cover that. Hold on.
Damn, this guy's good.